Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I think we are 1 o'clock straight up. And I think we've got everybody here in attendance. So with that, I would like to go ahead and call to order today's meeting of the Nevada Board of Wildlife Commissioners for Friday, August 15, 2025. And if I could maybe have Commissioner Booth lead us in the pledge. All right. And with that, if I could maybe have the department take roll call, please.
Chairman Rogers.
Here.
Vice Chair Young.
Here.
Commissioner Booth.
Here.
Commissioner Bourne. Here. Commissioner Caviglia. Commissioner Keel. Commissioner Mesner. Commissioner Munn. Commissioner Walther.
All right. And with that, if I could maybe have any county advisory board members here in attendance today, please stand. And if I could maybe, for those virtual online, if I could have you come up to the mic and state your name.
Paul Dixon, Clark Cab. Rob Beamer, Carson City Cab.
Jim Cooney, Elko Cab.
Joe Krim, Pershing.
Steve Marcus, White Pine.
All right, thank you. And how about any county advisory board members via Zoom? All right, seeing none, we will close out agenda item 1 and move on to agenda item number 2. This is public comment period. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. No action can be taken by the commission at this time. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission agenda. Persons making comments are asked to begin by stating their name for the record. So with that, is there any public comment here in Ely today?
Paul Dixon, Clark Cab. We had a public comment at Clark Cab that was brought up about with our urban ponds, we have an issue with excess fishing line and hooks being left on the shores. It was something that was raised a few years ago. We have Canadian geese and other waterfowl that are being impacted by being tangled in lines and being injured or killed in those systems. And I was wondering whether or not, working with the department or others, we could figure out a way that we could get additional signage, which I think we've done. We have additional trash receptacles there, but some sort of getting groups to go around and survey the ponds on a regular basis, whether they're NGOs or whether we find a way to fund somebody like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, Boys or Girls Clubs to do that so that we lessen the problem. I don't think we're ever going to eliminate it. We don't have enough game wardens to go there or other people to actually go monitor what people are doing. I just know that I saw a guy with a bait caster cast his son's line out, take his thumb off the reel, ended up with a knot, cuts it off, throws it out of the ground, all angry, and then rebaits it and stuff, but left the line laying there. And I said something, and of course he got indignant because I'm doing things. So you don't want to say anything because you don't have a law enforcement thing. I'm a big enough, brave enough guy, I'll say something. But at the end of the day, we really do need to fix that problem because it is impacting waterfall around those urban ponds, especially in Vegas. And I don't know if we have that problem at any of the other urban ponds across the state, but it may just be the population size and the type of people using the ponds in Vegas. But something that if we could figure out, or if somebody had a great idea of how we could get better monitoring or removal of that stuff to lessen the impact, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other public comment here in Ely?
Chair, if I may?
Yes.
I just want to take this opportunity to acknowledge the 2 new commissioners that are now on the board. Wyatt Messna, who has the cattleman's position, and Liz Munn, who has the conservation position. And want to welcome them and thank them for seeking a position on this commission.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And yes, I would absolutely second that. We're delighted to have both of you on the commission. I've had a good fortune of chatting with both of you and look forward to working with you going forward. And delighted to have your level of professionalism and integrity and character and knowledge that you bring to the commission. So welcome and thank you. All right, how about seeing no additional public comment here in Ely, how about any public comment via Zoom?
Yes, sir. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Good afternoon, Chair Rogers and Commissioners. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm Rebecca Goff, the Nevada State Director for Humane World for Animals, formerly known as the Humane Society of the United States. I'm here today to express profound disappointment in this board's recent approval of the so-called rules concerning wildlife killing contests that, in fact, serve only to publicly announce the board's endorsement of these shameful killing games. With this action, you've accomplished nothing but to embarrass the state by shamelessly pandering to the organizations and participants in wildlife killing contests. Nevadans have been loud and clear. A bipartisan poll found that the majority, 71% of state residents support the board ending killing contests, and 86 believe that coyotes, foxes, and other carnivores are important to our ecosystems. They see killing contests for what they are: cruel spectacles that waste wildlife, damage Nevada's reputation, and have no grounding in sound science. Yet this board continues to treat our native wildlife as nothing more than disposable pieces in a game for cash and prizes. By just facilitating the sale of licenses to participate in these gruesome killing contests, and even creating a season for contests instead of banning them outright, this board has ignored public opinion, ignored the science, and ignored the basic ethics of wildlife stewardship. You've sided with the tiny minority of people who slaughter animals for prizes instead of the vast majority who value and respect Nevada's wildlife. Wildlife is a public trust. It belongs to all of us. Nevada deserves leadership that has the courage to match policy with ethics, science, and the value of its people. I urge you to revisit this decision and do what the public ethics and evidence demand. End wildlife killing contests once and for all. Get on the right side of history. Take real action to protect the integrity of our ecosystems, wildlife, and our state's reputation. Thank you.
All right, seeing no additional public comment, we will close out agenda item 2 and move on to agenda item number 3. This is election of officers. In accordance with Commission Policy number 1, the Commission will elect a chairperson and vice chairperson. So, any discussion from the Commission or nominations, or why is everybody looking at me?
Well, as I got to sit in that seat for 2 years, I think it'd be good that you did too. So I will definitely nominate you for chair.
All right, anybody else on that item? Any thoughts on a?
I guess this is agendized as an action item. Does
Yep.
does it have to go out to?
I believe so, yep.
Okay. And I mean, I think Mr. Young does a fine job in the vice chair position. So I'd be along the lines to put him as vice chair.
All right. Everybody seems to be agreeing. They're looking at us, Paul. All right. Any other thoughts or discussion from
I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Booth. He wanted to say that quick before anybody threw his name out there. All right. With no additional discussion, it is an action item. So maybe let's take this out real quick for any public comment here in Ely regarding agenda item number 3. All right. Seeing none, how about any public comment via Zoom on agenda item 3? All right. We'll bring it back to the commission for any follow-up discussion or motion or thoughts. Yep. Commissioner Caviglia.
Just cut to the chase. So I'll make a motion to elect Chairman Rogers to the chair position again and Vice Chair Young to the vice chair position again.
All right. So we have a motion from Commissioner Caviglia. We have a second from Commissioner Booth. All those in favor with aye. Any opposed? All right. I guess we could have opposed, but it wouldn't have mattered based on the numbers. All right. Perfect. No, thank you for that. I appreciate it. It's been a joy serving as chair, and very much looking forward to the next year here as chair. So I appreciate that. All right, moving on to agenda item number 4. This is approval of agenda for possible action. The commission will review the agenda and may take action to approve the agenda for August 15, 2025. The commission may remove items from the agenda, continue items for consideration, or take items out of order. So with that, any discussion with regards to today's agenda? All right. Seeing no discussion items on today's agenda, how about let's send it out for any public comment here in Ely on today's agenda? All right, seeing none, how about any public comment via Zoom on today's agenda? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the commission for any further discussion or motion on today's agenda.
Unless there's further discussion, I'm going to make a motion to approve agenda item number 4, approval of the agenda.
All right, perfect. So we have a approval of today's agenda, or a motion for approval of today's agenda from Vice Chair Young, a second from Commissioner Bourne. All those in favor with aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, seeing none, that carries. We will move on to now agenda item number 5, and this is approval of minutes for possible action. Commission minutes may be approved for the May 2 and 3, 2025, and June 13 and 14, 2025. The first one there, actually, before I go too much further, can we do these, Dag both at the same time, or do we have to individualize them?
Thank you. Sorry. Yes.
Yep.
You can do them together.
We can do them. Okay, perfect. Good. So with that, we can do these together. So any discussion on 5A and 5B? Again, these are the meeting minutes for May 2 and 3, 2025, as well as the meeting minutes for June 13 and 14, 2025. Yes, Commissioner Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Rogers. Although the May 2nd meeting did look fine on the day that I did attend, I'll have to abstain from the vote as I missed the May 3rd meeting, as well as the June 13th and 14th meeting.
Okay, perfect. Easy enough. Yes, Vice Chair Young.
Thank you, Chair Rogers. And I as well was not in attendance for the June 13th and 14th, so I'll have to abstain from that meeting minutes.
All right. And obviously with our 2 new commissioners, Commissioner Mesna and Commissioner Munn, we're not here at either one of those. So we'll be abstaining from those as well. Any other? Director Janae, I'm sorry, did you?
Okay, so I just want to kind of get it right. For oh, we're okay then. 2 on June 13. We're just trying to make sure you have a majority vote for June 13 and 14. You had 2 missing, and you have 2 missing. You have 2 new commissioners, right?
Yes.
So that would be 4. And Commissioner Walther's not here, which would make 5. So you'd only have 4 to approve the June 13, 14 minutes, which is not a majority.
So we can move those to
Well, let's
September
see
then?
now. Let me think about this. So one of the other issues is, well, our budget, we have 4. No, yeah, you have to. Sorry, I was trying to run through the numbers because you only have 8 here, so you could make a majority of 8 being, you still have to get to 5 is my point. So yeah, so you're going to have to move the June 13, 14 to the next meeting. It's appropriate to consider the May 2, 3. Oh, is Mario
All right.
gonna be here? Hold on. Is Mario going to be here tomorrow or?
no, I don't believe so. No,
Okay.
Mario will not, Commissioner Walther will not be here tomorrow.
Okay.
All right. So with that, given that explanation that we would not then have a majority for agenda item 5B, the June 13 and 14 minutes. So we will move the approval of those meeting minutes to the September commission meeting to discuss at that time. So given that, we will just now be discussing and approving Agenda 5A, which is the May 2 and 3 meeting minutes. All right. Yep.
One other question for Dak Burkett. Should we actually make the motion, Dak, in the motion to move that June 1 to September, just to like tie the ball on it? Yeah, okay.
And I apologize.
To make the motion, when we make the motion to approve the minutes, that same motion, we could kick the June minutes to September.
Gotcha.
Because we do have it
Yep.
agendized, right? So that would be the formal.
Yep. Perfect.
Yep.
All right. Perfect. Anything else from the commission on those two items? All right. Seeing none, let's take this out for any public comment here in Ely. All right. Seeing none, how about any public comment via Zoom?
No, sir. If I could just remind people on Zoom, if they do want to make a comment, down the bottom of the screen, they can raise their hand to make a comment, but we have none for this item.
All right. So with that, I'll bring it back to the commission. Any further discussion, or if anybody wants to attempt a motion on this one? Yeah, Vice Chair Young.
I guess I'll give it a shot. So I'd like to make a motion to approve agenda item number 5, the approval of minutes for May 2nd and May 3rd, 2025 commission meeting minutes. And on 5B, June 13th and 14th, 2025 commission meeting minutes, move agenda item 5B to the September meeting.
All right, perfect. All right, so we have a motion from Vice Chair Young. We have a second from Commissioner Caviglia. All those in favor with aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right, thank you for that. Okay, with that, moving forward here on agenda item number 6, this is member item announcements, correspondence, informational. Commissioners may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the commission. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission agenda. The commission will review and may discuss correspondence sent or received by the commission since the last regular meeting and may provide copies for the exhibit file. Correspondence sent or received by Secretary Janae may also be discussed. So with that, any
Alan Janae, for the record, you have all of the correspondence that we have received.
all right, perfect. Anything else from any of the other? Yes, Deputy Director Scott.
This is a little bit of an ambush. Chairman Rogers, members of the commission, my name is Mike Scott, Deputy Director. And when an employee reaches a milestone, we tend to, we want to highlight that. And it's time for Alan. He's reached his 30-year mark. He reached it some time ago, but it's an honor to say a few words as we recognize Alan for 30 years of service with the Nevada Department of Wildlife. I've known Alan since the mid 1990s, back when we were on the Guzzler crew together in Winnemucca. And even then, Alan stood out. He was hardworking, never one to hold back his opinions, and always ready to take on the toughest assignments. A big part of the reason that our Guzzler crew built over 100 Guzzlers a year for like 5 straight years was because of Alan. Alan's journey with NDOW began in 1990 when he worked summers for none other than Ted France, who our Employee of the Year award is named after. In 1993, he became a wildlife installation specialist at Overton Wildlife Management Area. The following year, in 1994, he transferred to Winnemucca, where he benefited from my superior leadership on the Guzzler crew. By 1996, he promoted to Senior Wildlife Installation Specialist and was later reclassified as a Wildlife Area Tech 3. In 1998, Alan took a brief detour and worked nearly 2 years as a wildlife biologist for the Nevada Department of Transportation. In 2000, he came back to NDOW as a biologist 3 in the Fisheries Division in Winnemucca. He later transferred to Elko in 2006, continuing his work in fisheries. In 2010, Alan took on a new challenge as the supervising biologist in the Habitat Division. Then in 2013, he moved to Reno to serve as the Habitat Division Chief, a role he held for more than 9 years. And in 2023, Alan was appointed director of NDOW by Governor Lombardo. Clearly, Alan received much better supervision and direction after he left the Guzzler crew than he did while he was on it. Jokes aside, no matter the role, Alan has brought the same dedication and drive to protecting Nevada's wildlife and wild places. He's had a lasting positive impact on wildlife habitat, sportsmen, and the department. He's mentored countless employees and built strong relationships within Nevada and in many other states as a leader in both WAFWA and OFWA. Alan, 30 years is a remarkable milestone, and you've made every one of them count. So congratulations. Thank you. It's been fun.
Oh. Thanks. Thank you. As in my position, I can now take action with people that surprise me. No, I'm kidding. Absolutely appreciate the acknowledgement. I'm amazed that they could carry it off without me knowing. But yeah, the 30 years absolutely flown by. Means the world to me. It's just cool to see what we can do. I can't imagine ever doing anything else. The work that we've done as the agency for Nevada's wildlife, working with the commission, this time it's just kind of brought it all together, and I truly appreciate everybody's piece of my 30 years, but also to everybody that was in front of me that did this work for all of those years and held that spot, to all the commissions that did that work previously that set us up for our accomplishments. Absolutely can't say enough, but to our staff and everybody, all the sportsmen that lean in and contribute so much to this state's wildlife. It's absolutely been a privilege, and I literally can't imagine doing anything else. So caught me by surprise, but absolutely thank you.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you for that presentation, and Director Janae, congratulations on a wonderful milestone. 30 years is a very long time, and your involvement with the department and all the things that you've done over the years and the different areas within the department, and your leadership as the director is definitely admirable. So we appreciate that service. And as I've been on the commission, not only to see the leadership that's in place, but all of the young folks within the department as well. The young and up and coming folks that 20 years from now will be sitting in these same seats and sharing those same things. So it's good to see that the department is in great hands under your leadership, and certainly, again, as I mentioned, the young and up and coming folks as well. So thank you very much for your service. All right. Anything else from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Booth.
Yes, congratulations, Alan. The first Guzzler I built was with Mike. It was with Mike and Alan in Winnemucca. So it's been a long time and great leadership with the department. What's nice to see with the department, it's many times in organizations, it starts at the top, and it definitely shows here. But I also would like to acknowledge and recognize some individuals that attended the Mason Tees Ortiz Youth Outdoor Skills Camp. I found out today that Jasmine Kleiber was a former member of the Jason Ortiz committee or board of directors. We also had Zach Campbell, former board of director, and Logan Cronachie is the current member of the Mason T. Ortiz Outdoor Skills Youth Camp. I was fortunate enough to be at the very first camp, still continue to go to the Mason T. Ortiz camp as a volunteer. My grandson and granddaughter are both involved, so I'm very proud of that. But for the public and for the commission here, the Mason T. Ortiz Youth Outdoor Skills Camp was July 18th through 20th at the Winnemucca Ranch, north of Reno Sparks area. This camp is in memory of Mason T. Ortiz, who died at the age of 15 as a result of a snowboarding accident at Slide Mountain in January of 2011. With the Ortiz family, friends, and volunteers deciding to have a youth outdoor skills camp to commemorate Mason's love for the outdoor adventures, all for the kids. This 3-day overnight camping and skills training was established in 2011 and continues today with the assistance of well-trained and knowledgeable NDOW staff, primarily from the Western region, that I would like to personally thank on behalf of the Ortiz family and foundation. And as a board member, as a commissioner, I'm very proud to be a part of the NDOW employees who are there. NDOW is a strategic partner with the volunteer instructors and a crucial part of making this interactive outdoor camp happen for both boys and girls, promoting outdoor sportsmanship, ethics, conservation, honesty, friendship, and pride in what you do. Interactivities include shooting range, pellets shooting, 22 and shotgun shooting, fishing ponds, survival skills, archery, wildlife identification, and many other stations. I would like to applaud NDOW volunteers for their dedicated service, their knowledge related to wildlife sessions, and giving their valuable time and effort. Logan Clonachie, Zach Campbell, Margaret Lord, True Hubbard, Jan Nemec, Dalton Kinnaman, and Captain Jake Kramer. So thank you very much, NDOW.
Wonderful. Thank you, Commissioner Booth. Anything else? Anybody? All right. Seeing none, let's go ahead and move on then to agenda item number 7. This is County Advisory Boards to Manage Wildlife, informational. County Advisory Boards to Manage Wildlife members may present emergent items. No action may be taken by the commission. Any item requiring commission action will be scheduled on a future commission agenda. So with that, any County Advisory Board members here in attendance today that wish to be heard?
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, members of the commission, members of the department, Rob Beamer with the Carson City County Advisory Board. The board decided to unfortunately put me in as chair again, and I had some people reach out to me regarding the regarding urban wildlife. And I wanted to pass that on to the department and to the commission. May or may not know that Carson City's urban wildlife population is pretty extensive. It's pretty broad, right? And we have tried to coordinate efforts with the department to kind of bring public awareness and education to the citizens of Carson City and surrounding areas. In coordination with the Board of Supervisors and Mayor Lori Bagwell, we are looking at trying to, for the last couple of years, we've been trying to coordinate a month or a week where we could kind of dedicate urban wildlife awareness and education to folks, and trying to coordinate that with Nevada Department of Wildlife in an effort where we can maybe tap into some of the programs that the department has available in helping people understand how to deal with urban wildlife, right? From reporting it to if you find a baby bird in your yard to dealing with coyotes and mule deer and planning planting plants that mule deer maybe will deter mule deer from destroying your landscape, those kind of things. We've coordinated some efforts with the Greenhouse Garden Center in Carson City to kind of help out with that habitat aspect of it. We look forward to trying to coordinate this week. And I just wanted to bring it to your guys' attention. Last year, Zach Campbell from Con Ed and I teamed up and we gave a annual report to the Board of Supervisors with regard to what urban wildlife looks like statewide, right? And Zach did a great job, and he should be commended for it in coming up with an infographic that we're going to continue on. That meeting will be the next board meeting, I believe, the next Board of Supervisors meeting. We wanted to wait till after summer got kind of finished up and school got back in, and then we're going to present that again. So I'm working with Zach on that. But we would like to try and coordinate some efforts with, maybe identifying a week or a month that we can kind of coordinate efforts and bring awareness to urban wildlife and education to citizens of Carson City. We hope that it'll be a kind of a model that maybe the department can use potentially going forward with other counties. And then the second item is we received, or I received communication from somebody who lives in the Lake Glen area of Carson City, which is kind of always been a kind of a private community. They have a beautiful water resource and habitat down there. Years ago, they released peafowl down there, and they still run around everybody's houses and yards and stuff. It's kind of neat to go and see that, but it attracts a lot of wildlife. They're having some problems with habitat management and the dying off of their habitat. And the reason why the person reached out to me was to see if there was anything that NDOW would be able to maybe do in effort to maybe help restore some of that habitat, that sort of thing. So I promised her that I would kind of make mention of that at the next commission meeting. If the department has any desire to maybe at least talk to the folks over at the Lake Glen HOA, by all means, I'm happy to give the contact information, Alan, and or any of your staff. And I think it could be a potential opportunity for public awareness and just to show how great the department is and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other county advisory boards here in Ely? Any member items? All right, seeing none, how about any county advisory boards via Zoom with any member items? All right, perfect. So with that, we will close out then agenda item 7 and move on to agenda item 8. And this is our reports. So 8A is the division activity report. Secretary Janae and division administrators report will be provided on highlights from the Nevada Department of Wildlife recent activities. So Director Janae.
Thanks, Chair. We're going to give it the abbreviated overview. We have supplied our department activities report, and you can review that for its total content. But out of the director's office, we wanted to just make sure and acknowledge and welcome Michael Harbart, our new administrative assistant in the director's office. He's sitting beside Caleb down there. And then also, it's kind of a comings and a goings. The director's office is sad to announce the retirement of Conservation Education Division Administrator Chris Vasey. Chris began his career with NDOW in 1998 and has served all 27 years in the Conservation Education Division, serving as the division administrator for the last 9 years. Chris has spent his entire career educating the public about Nevada's wildlife and promoting all the associated outdoor opportunities. On behalf of NDOW, I want to thank Chris for his endless passion and professionalism in telling the story of Nevada's wildlife and wild places. And today is literally his last day. And so he kindly declined coming to Ely for another commission meeting. But yeah, we'll hopefully get another opportunity to say goodbye. There is a retirement party that's being planned, and as we know more, we'll give that to the commission. Other updates out of the director's office is the Legislative Commission reconvened in July following a 6-month pause due to the legislative session. During this meeting, 2 commission general regulations were approved: CGR 522, which was the ETAG regulation, and CGR 525, which is the Wildlife Heritage Account revisions. Additionally, Director Janae and Director McAdoo attended the Nevada Cattlemen's Association summer meeting where they provided recent updates, including the adjustment of the elk population objectives within the species management plan. And additionally, we heard from the Nevada Cattlemen's Association over trespassing issues, which is on the agenda for tomorrow. They will provide an update. With that, if there are any questions, I can take them. Otherwise, I will pass it along to Jasmine Kleiber, Biodiversity Division.
Thank you, Director Janae. Any questions at all from the commission? Comments? All right. Seeing none. Good afternoon, Ms. Kleiber.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. Jasmine Kleiber, Biodiversity Division Administrator, for the record. Highlights for the Biodiversity Division include that recent committee meetings with the House and Senate Interior and Environment Appropriations subcommittees have emphasized the importance of continued funding for the state wildlife grant programs that support state fish and wildlife agencies across the country. These programs provide critical support to NDOW's Biodiversity Division, as well as the Fisheries Division's native fish programs. The commission recently wrote a letter expressing the need for continued support for the state through these SWIG programs. And funding levels are determined annually through congressional appropriations processes. At this time, the congressional processes through those committees are currently projecting those SWIG grants at $72.4 million, consistent with last year's funding as well. And that's after markup by both the House and the Senate subcommittees. The final votes on that appropriation have not yet taken place. Additionally, the Technical Guidance or Technical Review Program has now officially been moved to the Biodiversity Division. This move includes transitioning a wildlife staff specialist, Astria Strawn, and the Fish and Wildlife Service Technical Guidance Grant to the Biodiversity Division. Interdivisional coordination is ongoing to ensure that the program continues its high level of engagement across divisions, as well as with federal and NGO conservation partners who plan and authorize industrial development projects that have potential to affect Nevada's wildlife. Future updates for this program will be under the Biodiversity Division moving forward. And with that, I'm happy to answer any other questions the commission may have.
All righty. Thank you, Ms. Kleiber. Any questions from the commission? Comments? All right. Seeing none. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. I'm Julie Gabrielson from the Eastern Region. I'm the Con Ed Supervisor for the record. Conservation Education Division received six national awards, including 4 first-place awards at the Association for Conservation Information, ACI conference, which was last week, 2 weeks ago in New Jersey. ACI represents the communicators, educators, and marketing specialists from state and federal wildlife agencies across the country, as well as private conservation organizations. NDOW was recognized for the agency's website, the newsletter, safe boating, and chronic wasting disease campaigns, as well as the small game guide and the big game guide hunting publications. Our boating education coordinator, Aaron Meyer, was also elected as the new president for the ACI at the conference. And Commissioner Booth, you kind of gave a big update on one of our items. So the Mason T. Ortiz camp took place July 15th and 16th. I'll give you a little bit more detail on there. And NDOW, we are heavily involved in that aspect with many divisions, conservation education, fisheries, law enforcement, and biodiversity. A total of 60 kids attended the camp, and participated in all of the recreation stations. This year, as he said, we had fishing, shotguns, archery, a pellet range, survival bracelets, and a rock climbing wall. The annual Angel Lake Kids Fishing Derby celebrated its 32nd year this year, and it was held on July 19th in partnership with the U.S. Forest Service, as well as some other local groups. We had 51 kids from Elko and Wells area, ages 4 to 15, and they gathered for a shoreline trout fishing competition. Kids also participated in education stations that included water safety, fish ID, that included anatomy from our help out from the Gallagher Fish Hatchery, Watersheds 101 with the U.S. Forest Service, Leave No Trace principles from Nevada Outdoor School, and a special visit from Smokey Bear and his engine. Conservation Education Elko, we are also gearing up to assist with their annual Nevada Outdoorsman and Wheelchair event. That's coming up next week, actually, out of Eureka. We have 6 hunters from across the country that have been awarded tags that were donated to the organization for the event. Over the course of 5 days, these hunters, they'll hunt with a designated team of volunteers, along with a day of fishing out at the Illapah Reservoir, visit at the Williams Gun Museum out of Elko, and they're going to get fitted for a shooting setup according to their needs and their abilities. They're also going to learn a lot more about Nevada and spend quality time with volunteers and NDOW staff and hunters. Any questions?
Hey, thank you for that. Any questions from the commission at all? Congratulations on the award. It's fantastic.
Thank you.
You bet.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rogers, Commissioners. For the record, Chris Crookshanks, Fisheries Division Administrator. First off, Commissioner Booth, thank you for a fine rendition of the pledge today. Couple updates from the Fisheries Division. Favorable precipitation patterns in the past few years have translated into fantastic fishing conditions throughout Nevada this spring and summer. Walleye and wiper greater than 10 pounds have been reported from Lahontan Reservoir, while numbers and size of largemouth bass caught during the Ruby Lake opener was the best in recent memory. Same holds true for most smaller reservoirs throughout the state that would otherwise be struggling with water levels at this time of year. Most Northern Nevada fisheries personnel participated in the annual Able Creek YY Brook Trout Project in early August in Humboldt County. Holdover YY brook trout stocked in previous efforts, as well as a number of Lahontan cutthroat trout, were contacted during the Wild Brook Trout Removal Project. Additionally, genetic samples were collected from wild brook trout captured and submitted to Idaho Fish and Game for sex ratio analysis to assess the efficacy of the project in this 5th year. A huge thanks goes out to other NDOW divisions as well as our federal partners for assisting in this effort, and also to the Heritage Committee for funding the genetic analysis portion of the project. And I'd also like to point out, I left each one of you today a copy of our Trophy Fish Program publication. This is a publication the Fisheries Division puts out once a year, which is a summary of our trophy fish program, and we've got fish sorted by species and by water in here. Like I said, it's something we put together once a year, and I wanted to give you guys a copy of this. Also, would like to acknowledge the people that are involved in this. First is our sport fish coordinator, Kim Tisdale. She runs our trophy fish program, and I'd be remiss if I didn't acknowledge our administrative assistants who play a huge role in putting this together, compiling it, and the layout. That's Marissa Peters and Aria Ernest, as well as our previous administrative assistant, Hope Harper. So I'd like to give all those people a huge shout out. And lastly, just want to say, Alan, congratulations on 30 years. Congratulations on your membership into the 3 Bad Day Club. And I just wanted to say that 29 years ago, I started my career as a summertime seasonal in Winnemucca, and that summer, Alan was kind enough to open his doors, and I slept on the floor of his spare bedroom in a spider-infested home that first summer. So congratulations, Alan, and that's all I have, and I'll stand for questions.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions from the commission? I guess the only quick question that I had is, since we're here in Ely, I know that you've talked before about Cave Lake and some fish stocking in there. Has that been completed, or are there still additional stockings going to take place in Cave Lake yet this summer?
our spring stocking, as the lake became full this spring, we really poured the coals to it and put a lot of fish in there. Generally, Cave Lake receives additional small loads throughout the summer, and then once again in the fall, when water temperatures cool down, we'll stock it again with another big load of fish. I've been asked already a number of times this weekend as to additional species in Cave Lake. Our local biologist, Heath Coral, is taking a really good hard look at the crayfish population in Cave Lake, and he wants to make sure that crayfish population that we once had in that reservoir properly rebounds, because that'll provide a primary food source for smallmouth bass that we want to introduce into Cave Lake.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anything else from the commission? All righty. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Chief Game Warden Christy Knight for the record. Over the past month, game wardens responded to several serious boat accidents across the state. The Lahontan Reservoir, there was a rope injury. The game wardens investigated a boating accident involving a tow line from a tube. The incident resulted in critical injuries requiring medevac transport to Renown Medical Center. The individual did survive but underwent emergency surgery. Lake Mojave, propeller injury. An incident on Lake Mojave involved a severe propeller related injury. The individual was airlifted from the scene for emergency medical treatment. Lake Mojave, personal watercraft collision. Game wardens also investigated an accident involving two juveniles operating a personal watercraft, which collided with shoreline rocks. The passenger sustained injuries requiring stitches, and the operator was hospitalized for an extended period before being released. These incidents underscore the ongoing need for public awareness and education around boating safety and the critical role of our game wardens play in emergency response and incident investigation. And on this, we also had another, in the last 2 weeks, had another save. A lady was jet skiing on the Colorado River. She fell off her jet ski and started going underneath a water taxi that was docked. And if you get stuck underneath one of those, usually you're drowned. Fortunately, our wardens got over there, and Aaliyah actually jumped off of our vessel and grabbed onto her and held her until another PWC could come over and actually rescue the lady from the water. The flow there was over 13,000, almost 14,000 cubic feet per second. And the fear that the lady had on her face and the exhaustion from holding on, from being sucked under, was, I got to see it, and Aaliyah saved her life, helped save her life that day. And then on another save, Game Warden Brittany Ryder demonstrated exceptional crisis intervention skills during a critical incident on eastbound Interstate 80 near Wells Avenue in Reno. An elderly unhoused woman, accompanied by her dog, was observed on the side of the highway with no stranded vehicle, posing a significant risk to herself and motorists. The subject crossed all 4 lanes of traffic, but due to Game Warden Ryder's presence, all traffic stopped. Game Warden Ryder coordinated with state police to close the westbound lanes, ensuring a secure environment for the intervention. Warden Ryder was also requested the assistance of a trained crisis intervention specialist. Her calm and compassionate approach encouraged the woman to return to the eastbound side of the interstate, where she became receptive for further assistance. Warden Ryder then safely transported the woman and her dog to a state police staging area. Upon arrival, the woman voluntarily disclosed her suicidal intentions and agreed to receive professional help. The incident highlights Game Warden Ryder's dedication, quick thinking, and effective collaboration with other agencies to ensure a positive outcome. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
All righty. Thank you for that. Any questions from the commission at all, or comments? All right. Seeing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rogers, member of the commission, Sean Espinoza, Game Division Administrator for the record. I'll give the Game Division's report. In the moose world, we did have an incident near mine. We actually had to intervene and capture a younger age class bull moose that was captured from the Turquoise Ridge mine, which sits a little bit northeast of Winnemucca, in late July after several days of occupying the facility. The moose was moved to Harrison Pass in the Ruby Mountains, where he continues to remain in a relatively small area around the release location. We've since noted that this animal has extended his movements. He has moved over to the Pearl Peak area in Hunt Unit 103. So he did spend a significant amount of time in a settling pond that had some arsenic in it. So he didn't feel good for several days. And it looks like he is beginning to mend himself, and things are looking more positive. We'll continue to monitor him. In the wildlife connectivity world, the Nevada Wildlife Connectivity Plan, a final draft was disseminated to various partners, interested public, and land management agencies for review and comment. Comments on the plan are due by September 19th. And also, you should have before you this document, the Nevada Wildlife Migrations and Connectivity Publication. If folks are interested, I'd certainly recommend going to pages 10 through 13 to look at the areas around the state where wildlife and vehicle collisions are the highest. And that was a joint effort with the Nevada Department of Transportation. And thanks to Staff Specialist Cody Schroeder for his efforts on both of these documents. In a quick report on the Desert Bighorn Sheep translocation effort, as of August 4th, and almost 2 months after Bighorn have been residing in their new locations, results have been mostly positive. Of the 58 bighorns released into the Cortez Range, 43 of those animals were marked with GPS collars. One uncollared ewe had a severe leg injury upon release and was euthanized near the release site. And of the 43 collared bighorns, only one mortality of unknown cause has occurred. So those animals in the Cortez Range are doing well. In the Tobin Range, 28 of the 43 released bighorn were marked with GPS units. And as of August 4th, 25 collared bighorns are still alive. So of the 101 bighorns released into other parts of Nevada, we've had 5 total mortalities. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the 38 bighorns translocated to Utah for their nursery herd. They have not been quite as lucky. They've had an outbreak of episodic hemorrhagic disease, and they've lost 9 individuals to that malady, which is largely caused by midges in water sources, which is a little bit unusual, but not something unheard of. But for that amount of animals to perish from EHD is a little bit surprising. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
All right, thank you for that. Any questions from the commission at all? I just had one question, I guess, and that is around the bighorn sheep and the transplants. I know we're only a couple of months in, but are the sheep doing what you maybe had hoped or thought they would do in terms of a disbursement, or just curious any irregularities there, or if they're doing about what you expected?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Chairman Rogers. So for the most part, especially for the Tobins, they have read the script and are sticking to it and are doing pretty much what we've asked them to do, and have moved to the upper elevations of the mountain and haven't moved a whole hell of a lot and are relatively healthy. The Cortez Range has had a few individuals that have dispersed a little further to the south and have been poking around the edges of the mine site, which we would rather not have. We'll continue to monitor them and see what they do. Some have come back, some are continuing to exist near those mine sites. So it's a little bit concerning, but the preponderance of the animals have been pretty much where we've asked them to be.
Good, perfect. Any other questions from the commission? All right, thank you, sir.
Chair Rogers, members of the commission, Mark Freeze, Habitat Division Administrator for the record. Before I highlight Habitat Division highlights, there's been a number of updates from when we submitted this to today, and I will try and record the facts as of today. So, restoration staff have been actively engaged in both preparing for proactive restoration efforts and participating in wildfire site tours, working closely with our federal partners. So far this fire season, 420 wildfires have ignited across the state, burning approximately 255,258 acres. For comparison, 99,000 acres burned all of last fire season. Of these fires, 216 have been caused by humans, 131 were naturally caused, and 73 remain undetermined. The largest fire to date has been in the Snowstorm Mountains complex between the Jake Snowstorms, MP22, and Midas Fire, burning approximately 104,000 acres. The next three largest fires include the Gothic Fire, which burned 36,000 acres in the Belted Range. Connor Fire burned almost 18,000 acres in the Pine Nut Range, and Barber Fire burning almost 18,000 acres in the East Range. In response, our field staff have worked closely with federal partners to develop plans to apply approximately 35 to 40,000 acres of pre-emergent herbicide across key wildlife habitats this late summer and early fall as part of both proactive and post-wildfire restoration efforts. Plans for aerial and drill seeding are still under development and will be finalized in coordination with agency partners. Next, our water development program. The Northern Nevada crew completed their build season by upgrading the Roberts Roost and Monument Canyon project south of Ely in Hunt Unit 222. One guzzler was lost in the Hot Creek Fire in Hunt Unit 077, with crews planning to rebuild this unit as soon as possible. The Southern crew is transitioning into monitoring water levels and remote water level monitoring, providing highly valuable the Southern crew is transitioning into monitoring water levels with remote water level monitoring, and it's proving highly valuable. They're also ordering supplies, performing guzzler maintenance. Currently, there are 44 ranch bot systems, three track tag systems, and one National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration weather station deployed, with units being added every week. Drawdown rates are closely monitored with water levels at 48 instrumented units, averaging 71% capacity, but ranging from 2 to 98% as of July 24th. And on the sheet, it says no water hauls are planned, but we are actively hauling water. We heard from Ridge. Eastern Region started hauling in the past couple weeks. We've got a couple units in Western Nevada, and then we're actively trying to get water hauls scheduled through our air operations for Monday and Tuesday for a few units down south. And with that, I'm happy to stand for any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the commission at all? All right, one question I guess that I had real briefly, and that is I thought I had seen or heard that maybe there was going to be some from a water development standpoint, some water hauls in Southern Nevada and possibly the Last Chance Range. Is that true and taking place? Or
that is correct. Mark Freeze, Habitat Division Administrator for the record. Yeah, Poppy Guzzler and then the Patton Guzzler in the Last Chance Range. We suspect there could be other units that are near dry in the Last Chance, so we're going to explore that more. There could be additional units to add.
All right, thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Afternoon, Chair Rogers, members of the commission. Matt Maples, Data and Technology Services Division Administrator for the record. As of August 5th, staff have processed a total of 766 return tags, of which 228 of those were reissued through the first come, first serve program. Additionally, 112 of the junior mule deer tags that remained after the second draw, which were all primitive mule deer tags, have been sold through the first come, first serve program as well. There are approximately 400 remaining junior primitive mule deer tags available for any juniors still wanting to hunt this year. and those will stay on sale up until 5 days prior to the close of the respective seasons. The Overton Wildlife Management Area dove hunt draw was completed and the results were released to customers on August 1st. And the E-tag regulation was approved at the Legislative Commission on July 7th. The change order and acceptance criteria for E-tags has been delivered to Gordon Darby, and we will begin working on the development plan over the next couple of weeks. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions from the commission at this time? The only question that I had real briefly is as it relates to first come, first serve. Obviously, we've heard a lot about that over the years, and we've made some changes and tweaks. And it seems this year I haven't heard much other than good stuff on first come, first serve. So I guess my question is I assume everything's working smoothly there, no issues as we've seen in the past with first come, first serve.
Yep, that's correct. Thanks for the question. And the program is running smoothly. Some of the small issues that we had at the rollout have been resolved.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All
That
right.
concludes our report.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And we will move now to 8B. This is litigation report. Deputy Attorney General Greg Burkett, a report will be provided on the Department of Wildlife litigation. Dag Burkett.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to start calling this the happy to be the Maytag repairman report instead of the litigation report. We have no new pieces of litigation and have not had for now well over a couple of years. So we're continuing to work on a piece that involved temporary diversion of water from the Humboldt to South Fork Reservoir, which was now a year ago. That case was dismissed by the district court and was appealed by Pershing County Water Conservation District to the Nevada Supreme Court. The opening brief was filed by Pershing County, and we are preparing a responsive brief as we speak. With that, that's all the litigation. I just would share one other thing, that is that when we're not litigating, we do a lot of other things for the department. And I wanted to share that I was fortunate enough to have an intern this year at the Attorney General's office, and he was none other than the son of former Warden John Swisher. I love the legacy stories. And he helped me work on a legal memorandum discussing pretty much every aspect of corner crossing, which many of you may know is maybe the most significant issue in public lands right now because of the 10th Circuit decision allowing corner crossing from public to public in these checkerboard areas. I've been keeping close contact with counsel on that, and a writ has been filed to the U.S. Supreme Court on the corner crossing issue, asking for decision reversing. That is, the landowner, Iron Bar Holdings, filed a writ seeking a reversal of the circuit decision in favor of the Michigan hunters. Yeah. So we are working on those legal issues as well as many others. So I just thought I'd share that we're not just litigating. Thank you. I'll stand for questions.
All righty. Thank you, Dag Burkett. Yes, we were beginning to wonder if maybe you were kind of like the Maytag repairman, just sitting around with nothing to do, but figured you had plenty to do. So no, thank you for that. How about any questions from the commission for Dag Burkett? All right, seeing none, we will move on to 8C. This is Wildlife Health Update. Wildlife Health Specialist Dr. Nate LaHue. The presentation will be provided on the state of chronic waste disease in mule deer. Mycoplasma, I'm not even going to attempt the next one. In various bighorn sheep herds in Nevada are highly pathogenic avian influenza. Wow. Well,
all right, thank you. Dr. Nate LaHue, Wildlife Health Specialist for the record.
I just wanted to go over kind of an update of some of the things that have been going on in the last year in the state, with the focus on CWD. So you guys have heard this spiel probably a million times, but what is chronic wasting disease? So it's a fatal neurologic disease of cervids. It's caused by a misfolded protein or prion, otherwise known as a transmissible spongiform encephalopathy. It's quite similar to scrapie, most similar to scrapie in sheep and mad cow disease in cattle. These prions are shed in tissues, urine, feces, saliva, collect most densely in nervous and lymph tissue. And you know, a lot of these are how they're spread. They're incredibly hardy. They can last for years on the landscape, depending on soil type. Infection to clinical sign averages about 16 months. Clinical signs to death averages about 4 to 9 months. And it's pretty much 100% fatal disease. So getting into Nevada, we have still, after a pretty successful surveillance season last year, we have not been detected CWD in Nevada. However, it's been detected in 3 bordering states: California, Idaho, and Utah. So Utah and Idaho have been positive for quite a number of years. There's been some slight movement south in Idaho. Utah still remains at the Great Salt Lake, seems to be a decent border. The biggest concern for us was that in May of 2024, it was detected in Bishop, California, which is less than 30 miles from the border. As most of you know, we do have migratory mule deer herds along that border as well. And California updated their surveillance plan and put a strong effort into surveillance last year as well, focusing on one of their detections on the west side, but also requiring mandatory surveillance in some of those X zones around Bishop. There was 2 more detections. Both detections were in Bishop. They're all in urban deer, which points to, somebody bringing it in like we suspected before. California doesn't have any farm cervids in the area. There's a few, I think, in the state that are grandfathered in. But so it's most likely was brought in through, material and then dumped probably in somebody's yard, which means, so there's no, see if this thing wants to work. Did it die on me? I want to just keep pressing button. There we go. So the good news is there were no detections in any of the X zone hunts last year. So right now, only 1 year of surveillance. So the numbers aren't high. X zone being a limited entry hunt in California. Oh, it's still going to cause me problems. There we go. So this is just an updated map of the nationwide and Canadian situation as well, showing, the detections in Idaho. There was a new detection in Washington, but again, showing that, and this is on the county level, the Inyo County down there that's positive. I don't know why this is. So prior to FY25 last year, we had little to no sampling done. That red circle shows where Bishop is. Those management areas 20 and 21 had no sampling in the previous FY22 and FY23 seasons. I guess so. I'm not sure why this is sometimes working. I got a lot. Let's just turn it back off and on again and see if that helps. No. am I supposed to be going towards the computer or towards? Sometimes it works. I don't know. I'll keep going and maybe now it's deciding to work. I keep turning it on and off. So maybe I'll try to aim perfectly at your computer. So anyway, May of 2024 was that first detection. In response, we worked with Nevada Department of Agriculture to implement a quarantine for what we dubbed the TRZ, or Transport Restriction Zone. This quarantine order required mandatory sample submission for all cervids harvested within the TRZ, as well as transport restrictions outside of that mimic the transport restrictions coming into the state for Senate Bill 85. So the red zone there, making up 19, 20, 21, and 29, was the transport restriction last year. We moved this fairly far north. One was to get a better picture given the low number of samples, and then the other was to include most of Reno and make it easier for a lot of folks that live in the area and have tags within the TRZ. They could go home and then make it a little bit easier to submit their sample. So our two goals were to determine if CW is present in Nevada, and if so, where, and to limit CWD's movement and spread. The mandatory sampling was to determine or try to give us a better picture of what's going on with CWD in Nevada. And then movement spread was that transport restriction. So for mandatory sampling was, again, anyone harvesting a deer in the TRZ. And it was accomplished by, they could bring the harvest to an office location within the TRZ, 2 locations. We also provided self-sampling kits, and we're continuing to do that this year for anyone with a tag in the TRZ, as well as providing sampling kits to anybody outside there that wanted to take the sample themselves. We had some check stations, and then we hired some on-call technicians for the weekend so that hunters could organize if they needed to leave that TRZ. They harvested on Saturday, needed to, say, go back to Elko. They could call our hotline, get a hold of our technician, and meet them to take a sample. And that hotline was set up to facilitate this. So results for the 2024 season, we collected samples from 576 mule deer, 50 elk, and both moose that were harvested. So this shows a little bit of a picture, and this is from a program, or I should say a portal we used called SOP for CWD. This is a nationwide, or it's available nationwide now, surveillance tool developed by Cornell University. And what you're seeing here is we put in the number of samples we thought we could collect. And we put in a lot of the risks, the CWD occurrence in other states, potential urban sites where people might dump carcasses, taxidermists, processors, those things like that. And then this runs a hazard model and gives us a quota target. And these quotas are in points, not in number of animals. So there's a paper that uses a point system about the likelihood that an animal would be positive for CWD. And this is based on the prevalence of CWD in adult mule deer that are hunter harvested. So a male that's killed by a car is worth double that, because animals that are hit by cars are twice as likely than hunter harvested animals to be positive for CWD. Elk are worth less than 1 point, given that they usually become positive less later in the disease progression than deer. So you see within that TRZ, we met our quota. The areas that are We have a lot more tags. You know, in the northeast part of the state, we met our quota. But you can see, especially the northwest and the southeast portion of the state, where we have fewer tags, it's farther from check stations. You know, we were quite a bit below what that quota, what that model suggested we should be taking. Come on. So as far as sampling compliance, we had excellent, and I was pretty surprised to see this number. Talking to a lot of other states, you know, the first year of mandatory, I mean, 50% I think was a good target. Now I'm going too. Oh, come on. Can you just go back one? Well, while he's working on that, so I don't know if you guys got a chance to see the table before it moved away, but we were hoping for about 50%. We got over 80% compliance within that TRZ, and I think that speaks to both the awareness and, you know, the desire to participate by our hunters, and also the pretty extensive job that conservation education did on getting the message out. We were lucky enough to get a USDA APHIS grant, and spent a lot on advertising through TV, social media, and really tried to spread the word on that. And I think, you know, those rates show that that was pretty successful. Is it just frozen now? Try it again. Oh, there we go. So this big table, just for grins, I took a lot at what is our voluntary compliance, you know, our sampling rate. So all the other management areas that where sampling is not required, there's no mandatory. You know, it's quite variable. We see some of the areas that are, you know, there's where they're closer to check stations. You know, there's more tags, like areas 10 and 11. We see higher rates. And then ones that are farther away, we see some lower rates. Rates were a little lower for elk, partly due to when our check stations occur in October, and a lot of elk hunts happening later. And there's probably a lot of other reasons that for the variation in you know, sampling rates, but gives an idea of kind of the level of participation. And so based on all that surveillance data, we set, you know, we go back and we do this every year, and we look at, okay, what's our confidence that we're free of disease? And we use the last 2 years of data because CWD is a slow moving disease. You know, it's unlikely that we are going to detect it the first year that it comes into the state. And modeling was performed via the SpeedGoat CWD estimation tool. It uses some of the same point system, like the hazard model we talked about earlier, published by Walsh et al. This just gives you an idea of the points in the that are used in this model. So you can see one. So since it's based on the hunter harvest adult male, it's a 1, and the model then determines the prevalence in adult mule deer that above which we would have expected a positive result. And when setting this up, same with because we get the output from SOP for CWD and run it in the SpeedGoat model, we're using management areas, and that seemed to be the easiest thing. We needed something to be consistent. You know, this was developed. SOP for CWD was developed in eastern states where they use counties. Our counties are just too big, and there's not enough of them to give us the granular picture of what's going on the ground that we would like. So we chose management areas because they're going to be static. They're not going to change over time. But the aim of the surveillance program, and this is a bit of a lofty goal in some of our areas, but it should have a detectable prevalence, meaning we should be able to detect a prevalence that is biologically likely at a level where management can be effective. And that means that our ideal target is at or below 5%. Based on the limited literature that's out there, a prevalence below 5% is unlikely to have significant impacts on herd performance. Also, since given that that's our target, once you start getting these higher prevalences on the ground, soil deposition of prions, the environmental contamination becomes enough that's really hard to work your way back. It's possible, but it requires a lot more management input. And if you're above 20%, you're probably never going to go below 5%. So only 4 management areas met this 5%, with another 2 below 6%. And this gives you an idea of it by management area. So the green is everything below 5%. Those are the ones we hit our target over the last 2 years. Yellow is those 5 to 10% detectable prevalence. That orange is up to 20%, and then the black is basically everything above 20%, where we just really have no idea what's going on there. So then, based on the population of each area, we can calculate the maximum number of infected deer. So it's important to notice that the prevalence for an area is not, and when we calculate this based on the number of samples, the population doesn't have an impact, because yes, if you have more deer, you have more transmission, but you also then that prevalence corresponds to a higher number of animals. So this calculates out to a maximum if everywhere was positive. So this is not like the 9,400 positive and 208 within the TRZ. So what's our plan for this year? We're continuing with the quarantine order. We got the quarantine order extended by Nevada Department of Agriculture. Dr. Gokachi has been incredibly supportive of this, and it's been really good to work with them on this. And as an aside, we're going with we work with NDA because the quarantine officer for the state has a huge amount of legal authority for restricting animal movement, disease testing, all of those things that they can, whether it's wild or domestic. So again, we're going to continue the mandatory sampling zone and transport restriction zone for the 2020 for this 2025-26 season. We're again going to continue to submit samples prior to leaving the TRZ through self-sampling, office locations, and again, we've hired an on-call technician. And then as far as disposal, I didn't talk about that, but we recommended some disposal methods for parts that aren't allowed to be brought out, but recommend disposal site of harvest. So the best is not to bring it out. Second best is through an approved, or I should say a lined landfill. Again, we're going to continue our outreach to encourage voluntary submission for the rest of the state. We're increasing our mailing of self-sampling kits. Again, we're doing all who request them, the TRZ tag holders, and then we have a couple other border units, 23, 24, 1 and 2 management areas where they're on the border, they're bordering states where we have concerns and they have very low samples. So again, it's voluntary, but we're going to go ahead and mail them those self-sampling kits to try to encourage some more participation. And again, we're going to continue our taxidermist processor. We'll continue to staff a technician at Malls Meats in Nevada. We get a large number through that. We get a large number through participation, especially in the Reno area of one of our taxidermists. So those are pretty effective with the taxidermists or processors, unless we're hiring a person there like Malls. Everybody else gets $10 per sample or head. So if CWD is detected, we'll cross our fingers that it's not, but you know, the goals are to minimize effects of CWD on ungulate populations, to minimize spread among herds, maintain low prevalence in affected herds. Again, that going back to that 5% number, maximize recreational opportunities, minimize health risks, maintain public's trust and support, and to use adaptive management to evaluate management effectiveness and to minimize the cost. So what does that mean in the short run? It would mean expanded mandatory sampling and TRZ as needed. If the determining prevalence in the affected area, and then using adaptive management, including harvest restrictions to limit spread, maintain or reduce prevalence, and maintain a reduced prevalence. So that's kind of a fast summary of everything going on with CWD. I don't know if you want to wait for questions at the end. I'm going to move on to MOV, but if there's questions on CWD, we can talk about that now. So you guys don't forget. Or
Yeah, please. Commissioner Cavillo.
Just a real quick question on the self-sampling kits. Is that available for anybody statewide if Sportsman wanted to complete that sampling?
Yeah, it's available statewide. We sent out an email. There's been at least one email that's gone out to everybody with tags where they can sign up on. It's basically just takes you to a Microsoft Forms. You fill it out. We get that. We'll mail you off one. And then you'll get a letter in that'll have a link and a QR code. And then we have a sampling video on YouTube that shows you how to take the sample. So yeah, it's available for everybody.
Yes, Vice Chair. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair Rogers. Thank you, Dr. Lehue. Is there any progress on live sampling? I know obviously post-mortem, you can sample it. Any progress on that?
So the answer is yes. There is progress being made as far as especially in the RT Quick realm, and we have some conversations coming up with USDA. Obviously, with everything going on at the federal government, that's been a bit delayed. But we're hopeful that we are going to explore the possibility of doing some live animal testing. Now, often it doesn't go into this type of modeling. It's kind of in addition. It wouldn't be instead, because the information about how exactly to give a point for a negative or a positive with this live animal testing, for some of them, it's more likely that, a positive means something, but a negative, did you miss it or something go on with the test? So that's at the state level. That's something we're certainly exploring. There's been also talk about direct to hunter testing, which uses some of that same technology. That has been met with a lot of concerns by wildlife agencies. There was a letter through WAFWA and AFWA regarding it, and the concern there being is, one, that information's not necessarily being shared with the agency. Two, it's not a validated test, and none of the RT Quick ones are validated as a specific sensitivity and specificity. And most food safety, so if hunters are using it, say, as a food safety test, it's not actually validated. So a negative doesn't mean that, especially if they're using muscle. Muscles, the good news is muscles usually has the lowest level and it takes the longest to just come positive. But it doesn't necessarily give you a great picture of that. So, but that is something, the live animal testing, or some states are exploring environmental testing as well, where, whether that's fecal collection on the landscape or, even in some areas with more concentrated deer populations, looking at things like runoff, older carcasses, things like that. So we are looking at those options as well. So I think there's some stuff coming down the pipeline, that's going to probably help that in the future.
All right. Anything else from the commission at this time? All right.
All right, we'll move on to MOV. So every year we do significant amounts of Mycoplasma pneumoniae. I think everyone's aware it's a causative agent of bighorn pneumonia, and the cause and of our biggest battle when we're talking about recovering bighorn sheep. We do a combination. Obviously, every animal that we capture during capture events gets tested. We also swab all hunter harvested animals and test a subset of those from the herds that we have questions about. And so this, like many, has seen some new strain movements, some new strain occurrences. The biggest one is what I'm going to call our new strains in the Santa Rosas and Snowstorm. So as you guys know, we've had a test and remove project there. Previous to last year, well, I should say we started to see some really good results, recovery of lamb recruitment. A major milestone we felt was that in spring of 24, we removed a chronic shedder out of Martin Creek subherd. And in 24, the summer of 24, we had really good lamb recruitment. Fast forward to January of this year, we'd identified this 105 the year before in the calicos. It was first identified in the 10-mile herd, and we associated with a collared ram movement that had gone between the calicos and the 10-mile herd. So we first identified it in 2023. However, during the 2025, we also detected it in Martin Creek. And then a new strain we identified, BHS 131, was detected in the calicos and then identified in Martin Creek and the snowstorms in 2025. And this confusion about, hey, where did all these strains come from? Some conversations with other states made us dig a little farther. And what we believe we are seeing is that both strains appear to be a recombination of BHS 55, which is the snowstorm strain, and BHS 53 of the Santa Rosas. And we say that because when we pull out loci, so we do what's called a 4 loci multi-loci strain typing. We look at 4 different loci to tell the difference between different strains. Each loci, when you pull these out one by one, will exactly match either 5.5 or 5.3, base pair by base pair. Now, it's possible that this represents co-infection, but if talking to the experts at Wattle, along with what we're seeing on the ground, it seems like a recombination is the most likely. But again, we cannot say for certain. And this just shows a map of, this was made last year before the latest, but it shows some of just to reorient. This is the Martin Creek snowstorms are over here, calicos, 8 Mile, Sawtooth, and Dorno, and Martin Creek. Well, I had this written here that it was unclear what the impact would be. And so far, significant impacts on Martin Creek were noted. Unfortunately, we just got done flying it on Wednesday, and we're seeing pretty low lamb recruitment across the board. The average lamb recruitment was 17. On average, and it seemed there were no subherds that were doing super well. So that's unfortunate. We had our fingers crossed that, hey, maybe it would be close enough to some of the other strains that are going on in here that there would be some immunity. Unfortunately, we did also have a lot of naive individuals given the success over the last few years. However, the snowstorms had shown good lamb recruitment this year. So it's a little bit of a mystery why my main hypothesis, the snowstorms don't have very many animals. And we had one positive in January that was killed by a lion. In February, continued to be positive. So death of those infected animals might have been the result. I'm not sure what the impact of the fire is going to be. It sounds like from a conversation this morning that some animals, we removed some animals or moved them from the South Fork of Little Humboldt to Oahe Bluffs last year, hoping that we would reduce that connectivity with the calicos. Sounds like some animals post-fire have moved back up into the South Fork. So I'm not sure what that's going to mean for connectivity. And it's pointing the low lamb recruitment is pointing to chronic shedders. It's still unclear the exact dynamics. We're early enough in the detection of this that it could still be moving around, and we may get to an improvement point. We've applied for an ION grant with Wild Sheep Foundation. If that's funded, we'll be doing some captures this winter and hopefully get a little better idea of what's going on the ground and how might we move forward. But again, not what we wanted to see when we thought we were pretty close to the finish line. New strains were also identified. So in the Mormon Mountains and the Meadow Valleys, they were actually separate. They were single detections of separate strains. Only three of the four loci were sequenced. So Wattle, which assigns new numbers, did not assign them any new numbers. And again, we don't really know what the impacts of this will be. The Mormons especially, we identified, I'll show here in a minute, the Southern Nevada strain. And so it's not really clear, but it seems like there's at least three different strains in the Mormons. So these aren't new strains, but new occurrences that we've detected. BHS 449 of the pancake strains was detected in the Grant Range 132 from captures. The Mojave strain, BHS 2, was detected in the Excelsior. So this is likely a new occurrence and suggests that efforts on Lone Mountain to control spread have been unsuccessful. Or at least not had an impact, I should say. We believe that it came from the White Mountains or some of the mountains south of the Whites in California, so it might have moved up separately. A low survey size or a low survey number in the Silver Peak suggests that it may have had an impact there. We don't have any pauses from there. Lamb recruitment seems to be good this year. But that kind of seems to be the story with Mojave strain, where you get a large initial die-off and then maybe not quite the impact on lamb recruitment. And then 047, which is a Southern Nevada strain. It's not a strain we feel like is particularly virulent, was detected in 3 new mountain ranges. However, we believe this is likely detection of long-standing low virulent strain. The more we look, the more we are going to find it. Several of these units have a history of augmentation from Southern Nevada sheep. And so it's very possible that these were moved 30 years ago and it's still, they're still present. And then BHS 003, unfortunately, was detected in the River Mountains. This is the first detection of the strain in Nevada. It was previously detected in the Black Mountains, first detected in Arizona in 2017. This is just showing all the detections that Arizona has reported in the past from BHS 003, and now seems to have moved across the river and up to the River Mountains. It's, looking at the map, it's very possible that there's some other herds that might be impacted as well. And additional surveillance is the only way we're going to know about that. Any questions on MOV?
All right. Any questions from the commission regarding that? Yes, Commissioner Booth.
Any news on the Jefferson Range?
No new strains detected, and it seems like the initial die-off, so that was pancake strain. It seems like the initial die-off was pretty significant, around 50%. I haven't heard lately from Hunter what the lamb recruitment has been. But no detections of any additional strains in there. It seems like the impact is from that pancake strain, and it aligns the proposed mortality levels and what the impact we're seeing aligns with what we've seen with the pancake strain and elsewhere. It seems like it can be a bit variable.
Yes, Vice Chair Young.
Thank you, Chair. Dr. Lihue, I believe it was the strain out of Arizona and the River
Mhm.
Mountains. Have you spoken with Arizona Game and Fish, and what does that usually do?
It seems like it's been variable, but it has had some pretty significant impacts in some of their herds.
All right. Anything else from the commission at this time? All right. Seeing none.
All right, and then real fast, avian influenza. So no surprise to anybody, but high path avian influenza continues to circulate in Nevada as well as the rest of the country. Reporting is, several small outbreaks occurred around the state last year. USDA continued hunter harvest surveillance in Churchill County. And mortality events included ducks, geese, and several species of raptors. We did have our first wild mammal case with a skunk in Spring Creek associated with, that was a single animal that tested positive, but there were 2 other skunks that were not able to test that were associated with that mortality. And that was a couple months after a duck mortality there. So last year, the biggest news last year was the first HPAI cases in dairy cattle in Nevada. Nye County was the first to become positive. That was with the most likely due to cattle movement, with the cattle B313 genotype. And then unfortunately, Nevada had the honor of being the first case in the nation of the D11 wild bird genotype in cattle. And that was in Churchill County. That initiated a large response from both USDA and the Nevada Department of Agriculture. Wildlife Services conducted a significant calling operation of wild birds targeted on starlings in the area that included testing in Churchill County. Starlings were suspected by the agriculture, USDA and NDA, to be the potential source of dairy-to-dairy movement and the initial move potentially from wild birds. So again, new species that were positive in Nevada that we hadn't due to this operation included the European starling with 1 case and the house sparrow with 1 case. Oh, and a ring-billed gull in addition. This just shows the detections. The red are outbreaks reported from either mortality or the dairy outbreak. And then the blue just shows Stillwater, where there was continued hunter harvest surveillance conducted by Wildlife Services that continued to find positive animals. Public reporting, this is not specific to avian influenza, but use by the public of our mortality reporting tool has been increasing each year that it's been available. So on our website, there's a tool, it's a form that people can report sick or dead wildlife. We get an email. There's quite a number of us, including myself, including our urban wildlife folks, that get these reports on some daily summary, so that if there is something we're interested in, we can respond. But it's also just a good way to track what's going on over time. However, we have seen an increase, but we think it's more likely due to improved knowledge and public awareness than higher wildlife mortality. As you can see, reports are definitely increasing. So some goals overall for the wildlife health program for FY26 include continued CWD surveillance. We're broadening hunter harvested MOV surveillance due to the Heritage Grant. We're continuing investigations of the seasonal elk mortality syndromes and elk population limitations with the grad student that's starting at the end of this month. We're continuing to work on developing our wildlife health database. And we have some money from Department of Public Health to improve reporting of wildlife diseases that are a concern to the public, especially things like HPAI, and assistance with several large translocation projects. That any questions on avian influenza or anything else I talked about?
All right, thank you for that. Any questions from the commission? All right, seeing none. Thank you for that very thorough report. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to what do we got here? 8D. This is Nevada. Whoop. Yes, I am right. 8D, Nevada Revised Statute 338 Public Work Contract. Deputy Director Jordan Goschert. A report will be provided on public work contract awarded by the department in the previous fiscal year.
Good afternoon, Chairman Rogers and Commissioners. I want to direct your attention to the support material for 8D. There is a list of the Public Works contracts that we administered during fiscal year 25. There were 16 new contracts and 2 amendments, and I can help answer any questions you guys might have.
All right. How about any questions from the commission on any of the public works contracts? I'm seeing none and feverishly looking. I think going once, twice. Seeing none. Thank you, Jordan. All right. All right, so that finishes 8D. Before we move on to agenda item number 9, we've been going darn near a couple of hours now. Why don't we maybe take, it looks to be about 2:45. Why don't we take about a 15-minute break and we will reconvene at 3 o'clock. Thank you. Okay, let's go ahead and get started again here. We are now on with agenda item number 9. This is Mule Deer Population Ecology and Management in Nevada, informational. Wildlife Staff Specialist Cody Schroeder. A presentation will be provided to the Commission on Population Ecology, Habitat Use, Migrations, and Management within Nevada. Welcome, Mr. Schroeder.
Thank you. Afternoon, Chair Rogers, members of the commission. Thanks for allowing me the time to present some data. I'm going to cover some old topics, but also some new ones. So happy to see and welcome some of the new commissioners on the board as well. Let's see if I can make this work. Of course, I jinxed it. Okay. All right. Starting just off, broad view, mule deer. Why are they important? We all kind of know them as an important game species, but they're really a keystone species of wildlife in Nevada. They're an iconic species for Nevada hunters. Really important part of the ecosystem as well. They drive public interest. A lot of funding for conservation comes from mule deer, and they require a data-driven adaptive management approach. So just kind of a little snapshot of mule deer ecology and life history. There's a lot more to it than this, but this is on one slide. As we all kind of heard this morning, they depend on a diverse seasonal habitat. So winter range, summer range, oftentimes transition areas, and of course, migration corridors that connect these seasonal habitats. Mule deer tend to be highly migratory. This is especially true. This talk is kind of tailored to the east part of the state, Elko, Nye, White Pine, and Lincoln counties, but we also have migratory herds on the west part of the state. Some of the key limiting factors, of course, fawn survival is driving a lot of our population trends and demographics. But what impacts fawn survival? Things like drought, that has a big impact on fawn survival. Predation can have a limiting effect on fawn survival and adults. Habitat loss, and then finally competition with feral horses. One thing I did leave off here is winter severity. That can be a very limiting factor as well. We don't tend to have it as much of a limiting factor in Nevada compared to some of our other states, but as we saw in just a few winters ago, 22, 23, that can have a pretty big impact as well on all age classes. And we kind of quantified this most recently in this report that was published in a WAFA report. We looked at annual survival of adults across the state from the years that we had data. That was 2011 to 2019. And we had about a 0.79 survival rate. And that was one of the lowest ranked of all the Western states. It was not the lowest. Montana actually had the lowest survival rates of all the Western states, but right around 80%, still pretty high for an annual survival rate. And again, that fawn survival really is what kind of drives year to year variation. So looking at some of these trends, this is exactly what I presented in May, but we do have new folks. And just to kind of reiterate some of our trends, this is a 20-year snapshot. The blue is the observed fall survey, fall fawn to doe ratio, and then the red is the spring fawn to adult ratio. They track very closely. Obviously, we lose fawns over the winter. That's why the red bar is lower. But really, we've been kind of up and down last 20 years. Last 2 years, though, things have been really looking more promising. We've seen that statewide rate kind of hovering closer to 40, which is phenomenal. Should lead to population increases. You know, one caveat with this is rolling this up on a statewide level. A lot of the data is being driven by pretty much Elko County, because those are our three largest deer herds are in Elko County. So a lot of the sample comes from there. But we have seen these trends throughout the state in other areas, central Nevada, and even in the northern herds. So that translates into this in terms of a population trend going back 20 years again. And really, we were pretty static, hovering between 100, 120,000 up until around 2014 is when we really saw these kind of more dramatic declines in statewide populations. It doesn't show much here. I wish this was bending up a little higher, but we are seeing a positive increase in our statewide population because we've had those last 2 years of pretty high recruitment rate. So that's a good indicator. And just to kind of remind folks, this is, again, I presented this in May. So despite these population declines, we hear a lot about, harvesting and over harvesting, and we issue too many tags. I hear that constantly. But really, when we look at a percentage of our harvest as a proportion of the population, we've actually decreased. This is going back to 1974. We were really high in the 80s when we had a lot of deer, and we've just been kind of whittling that down. So we've been really, really conservative on our harvest. That's kind of the take-home message. We've cut tags. The commission has cut tags. And we're really only talking about buck harvest at this point in time. We don't have any doe harvest. So we're really only taking 4 to 5% of the population. That's a conservative approach to deer management. Even though that population has declined, we're taking fewer deer on the landscape. All right, so looking at transitioning into kind of more habitat focus, this is information that Mark Freeze also presented in May. I just kind of want to tie it in maybe how directly it can impact deer. So this is the eco state map. It's a vegetation indices derived from satellite imagery. The picture on the left is a summary statewide of 1986 to 1990 conditions. And the picture on the right is more current conditions, 20 through 2023. The green is good condition. These are pretty tough to read. I apologize. Good condition shrubland. Lighter green is intermediate. As you go down the color list, you're into poor condition shrubs in yellow, poor condition grass in red, which is primarily cheatgrass. And then we have the browns are more pinyon juniper cover. And you can just kind of see, right off the bat, we have this huge influx of poor condition grass. Again, that's mainly cheatgrass driven. Some of it's, from fires, but it's also encroaching the understory of the shrublands, which is a really big deal. It robs the brush of the nutrients. And then when you do get a fire, you're more likely to convert to cheatgrass, essentially. So it's kind of a negative cycle. And so just kind of tying that in, more of a different graphical way to look at it. This is going back to the 80s to more current times, 2023. You can really see how that good condition shrubland has declined over time. And this red and yellow, which is poor condition shrub and poor condition grass, has, increased. Moderate to good shrub grasslands have decreased by half, while being classified as poor condition, areas of poor condition have increased. So that's a fourfold increase in those yellow and red categories. So as you might expect, and then just to kind of further dig into this, really that shrub condition cover has declined significantly while poor condition shrubs. And you really see this kind of inverse tipping point right here around 2014, between this bin 2013 to 2015, where, it really tanks and we're increasing in that poor shrub cover. This is on a statewide level. We obviously have areas that aren't this bad, but we do have areas that are kind of worse than others. So we've looked at this kind of in relation to bond ratios, and it does track fairly well. It doesn't perfectly fit. This is fall fawn ratios as a function of good condition shrubs. And really these track fairly well. The blue bars are the average 5-year bins. And the green bars are the 5-year bins for good shrub. Declining. This last year, we kind of bucked the trend a little bit, and that's because we have seen those high increases in fawn ratios. Our shrublands are going to take they're a little slower to respond. So we did increase good condition shrub, but I think it went from like a 11% to 12.5%. It's not a significant jump in the last time period. And then this is just looking at that as a function of spring. So again, declining trends, except for this most recent period. But really, when you kind of plot this with the population, it's even more apparent. This is, again, the same metric, percent good condition shrub from 1986 to 2023, just plotted alongside our population estimate. And this just fits really well. Obviously, there's other things going on with deer populations. It's not just shrubs and habitat, but that is a big driver of it. So kind of summarizing that, we see these 40-year trends showing significant declines in our statewide population, but also regionally, driven by kind of winter severity and this forage quality. I didn't really talk about green up yet, but that's a big component of foraging ecology for mule deer as well. And it really kind of highlights this regional variability and the need to have like a localized strategy when we're tackling some of these issues. All right, so this is looking at horse AUMs. This is actually from our report on policy, I forget the number, our wild horse and burrow policy, commission policy. We produced a report last November and presented on this. This is a figure out of that from the Habitat Division. The orange bars are BLM, wild horse, and burrow AUMs months by year. which is basically the forage requirements for a horse multiplied by the population estimate. And so we really see this huge upswing starting around 2014, when our horse population was just, skyrocketing really. I guess there's some silver linings that it has tapered off here, probably because of some of these gathers. We heard a little bit about that this morning, how many horses were just gathered in that Cherry Creek basin that we were looking at. That's a good sign. These are high AML and low AML. So right off, you can see even back when we were low, we're still above high AML for our AUMs. So that's not a good sign, but really we're talking about a 3 to 4-fold increase when we're looking at contemporary times. And then the blue bars, the way we calculate this is total wildlife population AUMs. So it's mule deer, elk, sheep, pronghorn, their forage requirements essentially multiplied by the statewide population estimate, summarized into one bin. And so, of course, those have declined because our populations have declined. We've lost deer, but our sheep, bighorn sheep populations have declined, and we've driven down our elk populations intentionally. So those have declined as well. Looking at general habitat requirements for mule deer, again, I talked about shrubs. This is a really important component of their requirements. So this is sage-dominated shrublands in the light green. This map was actually in that report, the connectivity report that you guys have in front of you. Just kind of looking at, general trends across the state, what's available. One of the things that stands out to me, obviously you see a transition from Great Basin habitat down to the Mojave when you're in more different type of ecosystem. Some of these orange, it's difficult to see on here, but this is mountain shrubland. So this is some of those habitats that we talked about this morning, like serviceberry, mountain mahogany, curly-leaf mountain mahogany, things that are real important for mule deer, but they're not like widely distributed across the landscape. They're very, very small in their distribution, but deer can be really keyed in on those. And then now I'm going to kind of transition to talking a little bit more about specific treatments that we've done. This is one that was done in conjunction with the BLM. It's still in progress, actually. This is the Moray Bench Fuels Treatment Project. So this is near the Hot Creek Ranch in Management Area 16. And the blue polygons are cut areas. The green bars or the green polygons are actually more of a thinning approach. Mariah kind of talked about that, sort of this more tailored approach. I think this is going to be the key for deer if a treatment's targeted for deer. We're already seeing positive use of this by deer. This is what it looked like beforehand. So you can see some infilling here. This is Moray Peak in the background. Slightly different angle, but this is right after the treatment. So you can see the cut piles, they're still green. So that was a fairly recent photo after the treatment. But you can already see it's opening up. We did leave some, islands and things like that for security cover. And then one of the things we kind of wanted to highlight is just some of the use of these eco-state maps. This is a tool that Matt Glenn actually showed me. It's called the SageCon landscape planning tool. It's out of Oregon, but it covers the entire Great Basin. So you can put these polygons, this is those treatments, and kind of look at the cover change over time by those eco-states. In this case, it's a fairly recent treatment. So we just took a snapshot of 2020 to 2018. Not a huge difference, but it has been, only a year, and that project isn't even fully completed yet. But we did see an increase in shrub cover from 2 to 8% of good shrub and 14 to 26 already with the intermediate. And I would expect as time goes on and hopefully we get some moisture, those will actually continue to increase over time. Here's another treatment that we did in the Toyabis in area 17. So this is Carver's area, Carver's Bench. This is Joe Bennett was the Tonopah biologist at the time when we got this treatment started. And we had the kind of foresight to put some collars out as well. So that's what these dots are. So the colors are a different individual, but you can see high use of these already. We used the collars, and we actually did a master's study on this, published at UNR as a thesis. We looked at before after treatments. They do use these treatments, and we actually look at the fecal content before and after to compare. And so one of the things we saw was that they had a higher component of shrubs in their diet after the treatment was conducted. So that was a good sign. Interestingly, they did use a higher percentage of pinion cover as well. So they didn't avoid the pinion cover. They actually kind of used it more as like thermal or security cover. So I think that highlights the importance of, leaving some security landscapes, maybe doing more mosaic, having some thinning worked in if it's a mule deer prescription. If it's for sage grouse or something else, then it might be a different prescription. Here's a photo. Actually, I think Michael West might have grabbed this photo, but this is the carver's bench right after. So you can see in this one, the trees are starting to turn orange. We saw deer using them right away, which is a good sign. They didn't avoid them. The shrubs seem to be pretty vigorous. We got some good moisture right after those were done. All right, so transitioning into more contemporary data. This is some of the maps you saw that were handed out the field trip. So this is the Area 22 migration corridor. So caveat on this data is that these are preliminary maps. They haven't been published anywhere yet. We probably need to do some additional analyses. This is a year and a half of data. We really generally like to have 2 full years of data so that we can have like full migration sequences, 2 full years of migration sequences to get the clear picture. But so after this fall, we'll reanalyze these and start to publish those. But what this is it's kind of like a home range analysis. So, but it's for multiple animals. So the more animals that use a same corridor, it basically stacks all the sequences together and it creates a model. And then the colors are highlighting basically the areas that more animals use at the same time, or at least the same path. And so red and orange correlate to kind of high and medium use. Yellow and gray are more like low use, or only 1 or 2 of your animals out of your sample use those corridors. And as we kind of discussed this morning, we caught most of these deer in the southern end of Area 22 here in Fairview, Peak area, the Highland Range, and the Power Rocks. Quite a few of them went over into 23. We don't see that distinct corridor primarily because they don't all use the same spot. There's actually, you can kind of see it looks like more like a spider. But this is all along Highway 93. It's one of the hot spots for deer and elk that are in that connectivity report that you have in front of you. This kind of corroborates, and this is one of our top priorities from an agency standpoint of an area that we want to minimize collisions on that highway, because I think the DOT guys in the southern region called it Death Alley or something like that. They had a nickname for it, an unfortunate nickname. Other things to highlight: the winter range polygons here. Again, this is where they were mostly captured. Quite a distance all the way up to Ely and even north of Highway 50. But the bulk of the corridor is really along the Shell Creeks and the Egan's that we kind of traditionally knew. We did see movements clear up into Duck Creek Basin, into Area 11. We saw some movements into 13 and 12 like we discussed this morning. Wanted to kind of just look at it as an overview of how they might use some of these treatments that have been done. They definitely use the blue polygons are treatments, mastication or tree removal treatments. You can see they're right in line with some of these corridors for sure. Deer don't tend to spend a lot of time in them. It doesn't seem to be on the migration, but they do use them as kind of more stopovers. At least these particular treatments. They definitely use some of the burn areas. I'll discuss that here quickly. But some of these, this is Muleshoe Summit right here. So we got Cave Valley on this side. And then the highway 93 right here on the east side. Same picture. This is the satellite imagery on the left-hand side with no corridor. This is just mapping the fire perimeter. And then you can see some of these treatments. The polygons aren't on here. But you can definitely see where some of these treatments have been conducted. And so deer are really using the burn. This is no shock to some of the locals probably, and the biologists that know these deer herds well. They spend a lot of time in the burn, but they definitely go through these treatments as well. In this area, this is again Muleshoe Summit right in here, highly used by this deer herd. And we kind of pulled out elevational bands. It seems to be around 6,500 to 7,500 roughly is kind of the sweet spot for those corridors. Again, we did this for area 13, same caveat, preliminary data. We'll probably reanalyze this after we have a full picture after this fall migration. Same modeling approach. What we see kind of different here, I would say, is these area 13 deer are way more, there's a lot more red. And that's just because it's a more restricted corridor, a lot more deer using the same exact paths. We kind of knew, we knew we had some prior color data, and I'm sure the locals know this as well, but we saw some use on the west side. It's primarily on the east side. This is Highway 6, and you have Current down here. A lot of use on these fields, these ag fields around Current. Looking at the winter range, it's distributed, really all the way from Highway 6 down. This is like the Schofield Bench area, Schofield Burn. They like that a lot. Really linear corridor. They spend a lot of time right near the highway. We actually had collared deer hit on the highway right here. And then we also have this kind of ancillary corridor that we weren't really as much aware of, but this is Kimberly Mountain where we were this morning. So area 13 deer was caught down here. It's Summers right in that basin, kind of north of Kimberly there. And then these area 13 deer really strongly use these fuels treatments, or at least they're overlapping in space. Again, they kind of use them as a stopover. That long linear red is the corridor, the primary corridor. You can see it really follows a pretty tight line. There are some little strands to it, but these treatments were definitely, I don't know if it was strategically or not, but they're definitely aligned strongly with these corridors, which is a good sign. All right, and then now we've got some predation projects. We talked about some of these on the field trip already, but statewide, this is just big picture. Any project that, may have a benefit to mule deer. We have our Project 37, which is big game protection, targeting mountain lions statewide, but we can focus on areas. We have some projects in Mineral, Washoe, Nye, Eureka, Elko, and Pershing counties. Project 38 is coyote removal statewide. A lot of that's focused on pronghorn, but we do have some specific to mule deer. We've been continuing this project for quite some time. Unit 144 kind of transitioning to more of a maintenance strategy there, at least for time being, and possibly some more units in Washoe County. And then Project 40, coyote mountain lion removal. Really, this is focused in Area 13 right now. And then Project 47, which is a mule deer enhancement project. Mule deer protection and assessment focused in 081, Area 11, Area 12, Area 16, and various Washoe County sites, primarily the Granite Mountains. These numbers might not be the most up to date, but it's as good as I could get a week ago. So we removed 10 lions out of 121 in FY25 and partly into 26, 4 lions out of Area 11. This is probably higher, more like 60, I think, coyotes out of 131. And then we removed 2 lions out of Area 13. And you guys heard from Nathan this morning, some of the tactics that we're kind of deploying using the collar data to inform some of these removals and some of his methods that he has used. And there's others that are carrying out some of these as well, others at Wildlife Services. So just kind of summarizing some of our key management priorities, we have a huge focus on habitat restoration. I didn't talk much about wildfire recovery and rehabilitation, but that's obviously a huge part of what we do. Mark talked about some of the fires playing out this year, kind of as we predicted. We're going to have a lot of focus on that. We still want to build on the integrated population models to kind of improve their accuracy. We're going to continue with predation management and some of these mule deer enhancement projects. We've got our ongoing collar projects. We've got habitat projects that are still being implemented from that MDEP program, as well as some of the predator projects. Future directions, we're looking to initiate a statewide fawn collaring study. Still kind of working on the details of that, where it'll be carried out. We continue to work on connectivity on some of the mapping that I've showed today, that report that you guys have in front of you. We also working with the USGS on publishing these and getting some of our other corridors. I haven't even mentioned some of the other corridors. We're working on Pronghorn in Washoe County, Pronghorn on the Oahe, Bruno. We've got a Spruce Mountain, East Humboldt deer corridor that they're working on for us right now. And hopefully those will be out within a few months. The USGS process is fairly daunting. It takes a long time to go through their peer review process. Continuing engagement with the public and education. And no details on this yet, but we are planning to have another mule deer summit in July of 26. So that's going to be a big part of that public engagement process. All right, so just kind of summary takeaways. Recruitment drives population trends. That's really nothing new. We want to use science-based decisions. That remains a foundation of what we do, and hopefully some of the decisions that are made by this board. Continued investment in habitat, that's been a long-standing thing for us, and just monitoring, I think, is a critical part of that. And then finally, we couldn't pull this off without a lot of NGO support. We get tremendous amount of support from our NGOs. I've got a slide that kind of highlights some of them here. All right, we'll see if this works. This is my video. So this is kind of what you're going to see if it works, is a mule deer migration of one deer that was collared in area 22. And it's got some pretty cool movements. Knew I jinxed it. All right, so, oh, where'd it go? So it's going to start down here, actually Burnt Peak. Went really fast. That was actually a month. It migrates up to Ward Mountain. All right, now it's here. This is where we were this morning. This is where the field tour went. Went back through the Robinson mine. Whew, that was really fast. Oh, no, it's still going. So this is approximately 120 miles as the crow flies from like Burnt Peak to Robinson Summit. All right, it's going to play it in reverse. Hopefully pause at the end. So I'll just kind of show what this deer did. So it was caught down here first year on Burnt Peak. Oh. Actually, can you like play it all the way to the very end? Just straight through. Caught on Burnt Peak, migrated up, summered in area 12, went through 13, went through the mine, went past Ward Mountain, followed a similar path, but now it's on a different winter range. So totally, this is Fairview area in the Highlands. Spent its second winter here. Now it's going to come up through Muleshoe Summit, switch. Now it's on the east side of the Shells, north of Grafton. Its summer range is basically right here at Horse Camp. cattle camp spring. So that's where it is right now. And I think one thing to note, this isn't typical for mule deer. They typically follow one path, especially adults. But this was a 6-month-old fawn when we caught it, and it was a buck. And so just to kind of highlight some of the challenges, it was caught on winter range in 22. It was in 12 during the hunting season, its first year, 12 and 13 during the archery and muzzleloader, but then it was in the rifle during down in 22, and now again it's in basically north of Mount Grafton, so on its second year. So I think that's all I had. Oh, I do have one more slide. You can pull that back up. 2 more slides. Yeah, so this is an important one. Partnerships and NGO support, as I mentioned, had a tremendous support from some Nevada specific groups. Also our federal partners, the BLM and Forest Service. Obviously we couldn't carry out a lot of this work on the ground without them. So muley specific groups like Nevada Muleys, Muley Fanatics, but also groups like NDU, Meadow Valley, WIN, Mule Deer Foundation really stepped up. They funded a lot of that collaring work in 22 and in 13. And so we're just super appreciative to have the support from these guys and gals. With that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Wonderful. Great presentation, Cody. We appreciate that. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Bourne, did you have or Commissioner Booth? Mm-hmm.
Yes, Cody, you mentioned that you had a 0.79 survival rate, second to Montana. So that means 79% of the mule deer survived the winter?
Yeah, adults.
Okay.
That's annual survival rate. Yep.
And then the harvest was only 4 to 5% of the total population of deer?
Yep, statewide, it's between 5 and 6%, I think.
And what's the estimated total population?
Our most recent was 72,000.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Bourne?
Thank you very much for the presentation, Cody. Question on fencing, spring fencing on wilderness study areas. Can it be done?
Ooh, that's a good question. One that I cannot answer.
I can take that if you'd like.
Perfect.
For the record, Deputy Director Caleb McAdoo. Yes, it can be done. We've done that. It requires NEPA analysis, pretty extensive NEPA analysis. So we've done that in the Go Shoot WSA.
Really like that answer. Thank you.
Thanks, Caleb.
Question number 2. It was mentioned today in our field tour, bitter brush, possible chaining. There was just a little bleep about it somewhere. Has there been any more extensive talk within the department of the possibilities of doing a study plot, maybe 100 acres, 160 acres, getting with BLM on something like that? Bailey and Malloy just glares out at me because it's kind of like an hourglass and it narrows down right at Bailey and Malloy, Mud Springs, right across that corridor right there.
Yeah, good question. I not that I'm aware of, but it's certainly something we could explore. I definitely think that was kind of one of my keys was like monitoring. I think it would be good to look at it from a vegetation standpoint, but also potentially a mule deer use that could be done with collecting pellets or putting collars on animals. There's a variety of ways to look at it, but we haven't had anything formal that I'm aware of. Yeah, that Maury Bench one was probably really our only, and that was Hunter Burkett's project out of Tonopah. And he's actually doing some graduate work on there. So we're going to look at that data in relation to that. There's definitely bitter brush out there on that Hot Creek area.
One last question on the Maury Bench project. Roughly how many more acres are left on that project?
Ooh, that's a good one. I'm not sure on the acreage. I don't know if Joe.
It's all right.
We've still got a ways to go on it. I know.
Okay.
But we've made some pretty good progress, with what we've had so far.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Yes, Vice Chair Young.
And thank you, Mr. Schroeder, for the presentation. Really good job. Quick question. So reviewing the caller data, obviously very exciting. Not only the data and also interesting how we're, had a couple deer, 11, 23, 13. Looking at the map though, is there any future plans as to hunt groups 111 or 115 or 231 as to maybe future collaring projects or any consideration, as to say, going into it, just knowing those are some pretty big deer population units that we don't have collars on them in my.
Yeah, that's a good question. We don't have any plans right now for it. That we had a project kind of lined up with Great Basin National Park. Unfortunately, that project kind of got halted with some of the federal funding halts. I would like to get some more callers in 11. I think that would be a good place to follow up. But yeah, nothing formal. But I definitely think it's warranted and possibly in 2023 as well.
All right. Anything else from the commission? Yes, Commissioner Keel.
Yeah, thank you, Chair Rogers, and yeah, great presentation, Mr. Schroeder. It's nice to see these collaring efforts and all the data that's coming from that. And then I know just recently Meat Eater had a podcast with Dr. Monteith from Wyoming, and I think you'll probably get a lot of questions on trying to draw inferences between his work and what we're doing here. How much of that is relevant, but really, can you address what's the resource gap between his work and where we're at with Nevada in terms of either funding or people to carry out that research?
Yeah, Commissioner Keel. Good question. So the scale is probably an order of magnitude higher of what they're working with out there. Just the funding alone, I think, is a lot higher. Dr. Monteith, I know him fairly well. We go back to early graduate school, and he's been starting some of that work actually even in the Sierra Nevada over in California and kind of taking it to Wyoming. But he has a full lab. He's got, postdocs and masters and graduate students, working on that project. And one of the things they really do it was in that podcast, because I listened to that as well, as they followed the same animals year to year over a long period of time. So typically our collars will last for, 2 to 3 years if they survive, but they actually monitor them even longer. So they catch the same animal every year, and they actually catch them twice a year. So the capture cost alone on that is astronomical from what they're doing. It's pretty impressive. I do think we can pull inferences there. So that's one good thing is, it does apply to Nevada. It's just nutritional ecology really and migration ecology. So it still applies here. And I think we can take our data, even though we don't have those huge studies and sample sizes like they do. Like for instance, just looking at the effects of a winter on fawn recruitment, and also the potential for deer to grow post winter. That's one of the things he highlighted in that. We don't have the data to show it, but we can definitely probably go back and look at trends over time and maybe see if that explains some of the things we've been seeing. But the bottom line is, if you have a big winter like that, like they saw in Wyoming, it can take 7 to 8 years post winter to have, because you got a couple delay years for those animals to rebound, the females, and it's all about the mother's nutrition. It really is. And it drives everything. It drives quality of antlers, it drives populations and everything. So, and he acknowledges predation in that podcast as well, but it really is at the heart of it, nutritionally driven.
Yeah.
So I hope we can extrapolate to some of our data.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
All right. Anything else from the commission at this time? I had a couple of things, Mr. Schroeder, and that is, you mentioned that we weren't the lowest survival rate. I think you said Montana was. Just curious, what state was the highest survival rate?
I don't recall. Yeah. I can definitely pull that report out, but
yeah, no, I'm just curious. But I thought this was a fantastic report. I thought the data that you provided on this new collar data and in area 12 and area 13 and 22, I think is fantastic. I know Vice Chair Young brought the notion up of Area 11 and potentially Area 231. I mean, I would absolutely, given some of the data that we're realizing with this study, I mean, if there's an opportunity to look into that and support some collaring in those areas, I think it'd be kind of interesting to see what data we are able to find in some of these other areas. Because I think that with this data, at least in its infancy of 18 months or so, I think we've learned a lot, maybe validated some things that we knew, and then maybe some things that we thought we knew but didn't know. So anyway, so I thought that was great. The other thing I would say, Mr. Schroeder, I would like to keep seeing you a little more often at these things. Again, this is so critical, and a lot of eyes on our mule deer right now, and to have these type of updates and reports, I think as we move forward, and seeing you here more often is, I know we see you quite a bit, but we like you, Cody. We like to see you more often.
I'd be happy to present, as these data come out. I definitely plan to keep the commission apprised of anything we're doing. We're hoping to have our connectivity plan rolled out soon. So there's some things we need to probably report back on between now and, I don't know, before May for sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, that's great. And the other thing, lastly, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the department for the tour this morning. I thought it was just fantastic. So thank you to Director Janae and Mr. Espinoza and yourself, Cody, and also the local Area 12 biologist, Ridge. And I apologize, I don't have, what is it? Rickett. All right.
Ridge Ricketts.
Yeah. So anyway, so the tour today was just fantastic. We sit in these meetings, we talk about all of the issues, and we look at slides and numbers and graphs, and that's all wonderful. But to physically get out on the landscape and see what's going on out there, the good and the bad and the challenges that folks on the ground deal with every day. So anyway, so thank you all for that. It was extremely informative and value added for me anyway, in the decision-making process to be able to see some of that stuff. So anyway, thank you to the department for that. Yes, Commissioner Bourne.
Question. Cody, given the extremely narrow width of the trail in Area 13, I know there are some projects that are going to come about very quickly, possibly this year, on Current Summit. Are there any other long-term projects planned farther south on that trail from Well Station Summit South in that country?
That's a good question. One that I don't have the answer for. I hope there are. I don't know if Mariah is here still. You want to tackle that one, Mariah, possibly? Come on up. Join the party. Don't stop now.
This is on the record, so go ahead.
So Mariah Colda for the record. I am the habitat biologist here in Ely. We do have some additional projects planned, not quite as far south as Well Summit. Some of that is limited by what we have available for NEPA through the BLM and the Forest Service office. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Anything else from the commission at this? Yeah. Commissioner Cavilla.
Cody, thank you for that presentation. It was awesome. The one question, that the survival rate is 79%. What is the high side of that? What do you remember the percentage of the highest survival rate? Just curiosity.
I've seen it as high as like 86 to 88%. Yeah, on an annual, like on a year-to-year basis. Again, that was kind of rolled up over a multi-year time period, so it can go up and down for sure. But it tends to be between 80 and 86%. It kind of varies between those typically.
Yeah, Vice Chair Young.
Yeah, just real quick, Mr. Could you send us that document? I'm just interested to see the different states and.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Anything else? Any other commissioners? We're going to see Cody more often, so we can catch him the next time.
All right.
If you
Appreciate
mention. Thank you, Cody.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it. All right. Moving on from agenda item number 9, we are on agenda item number 10, and this is BATS and Abandoned Mine Lands, informational biologist Joey Danielson, summary of statewide bat conservation efforts under the department's bat conservation program, focusing on habitat assessment, mine closures that protect roosting sites, and interagency partnerships to mitigate impacts while supporting bat populations. So welcome.
Yeah, good afternoon, commissioners. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Joey Danielson. For the record, I'm a wildlife biologist 3 out of Ely in the biodiversity division. And yeah, my talk today is going to be about our Nevada Bat Conservation Program, which a big part of that is AML, but I'm going to talk about the other aspects of the program too. All right. Oh, got a couple slides there. All right. So we're going to talk about some bat ecology and then get into our programs. And that's a lot of acronyms, but I'll touch more on those when we get to those topics. So in Nevada, we have 23 species of bats, and they are long-lived. Lots of bats can live 10 plus years. There's bats in the wild that live to be 30 years old, and they have usually one pup a year. So they're small like rodents, but they don't act like them ecologically. So there are a couple different strategies, life history strategies. So some bats will migrate, some will hibernate, and bats can migrate from here down to Mexico or Central America versus the hibernating bats that when it gets cold, they'll go into a cave or a mine or something cold and just chill out until it gets warm again. And they can come out of hibernation during warm spells if they need to, or if they have if the temperatures are right. Bats roost in a lot of different substrates, trees, buildings, mines, caves, leaf litter for some species. Some more ecology. Bats are insectivorous in Nevada, so they eat bugs, but there are some occurrences of nectar feeding bats in the state, and there are other bats that feed on bigger prey like scorpions. Bats use echolocation to find their prey, but they also have good vision. They're not blind. They don't see colors, but they can see at night. They're nocturnal, so that's important. And I'll point out that they're all in the order Chiroptera, which means hand wing. And you can see in that graphic there that they have the same bone structure that we do, just arranged a little differently. So why are bats important? They save farmers an average of $23 billion each year by reducing crop damage and reducing the need for pesticide. They also help by eating things like mosquitoes, which can transmit West Nile virus to humans and other wildlife. And they eat a lot. They can eat half their body weight or more in insects each night. And I'll also point out that maintaining biodiversity of bats is important. So those 23 species all work a little bit differently in our environment. They eat different insects. They're generalist, but a lot of them would prefer one type of prey source over another. And we'll get into our programs now. The first one being the Abandoned Mine Lands program, which I will call AML. This map you see here on the left of the screen shows all of the mapped hazards in the state. And that is just what the Department of Minerals has had time to map. That is not every feature in the state, whether it is a shaft and adit, a stope, or just a historic mining feature like a cabin. But there are estimated to be hundreds of thousands of abandoned mine features in the state. Not all of those would be hazards. So we work closely with the Nevada Division of Minerals to look at these sites and assess them for wildlife potential, especially bats in Nevada. INDOM, the Division of Minerals, is mandated to assess abandoned mines in the state and close them to protect people and wildlife. And so that's what we do. We assist them with the wildlife portion there's also a cultural and a geology portion before they can close a mine, an abandoned mine. So we'll go to sites or facilitate partners doing surveys at these sites to assess the bat habitat, to see how important it is for bats and whether it needs to be gated so bats can access it, or if it can be closed if there's no cultural value and no wildlife value. And the reason we're doing that is to protect people who might accidentally or on purpose go into one and get hurt, or wildlife, cattle, bighorn sheep. A lot of dead animals have been found in shafts across the state. Since our program started, we've provided over 3,000 recommendations that have led to these closures. Similar to the abandoned mine land closure program we work with INDOM on, we can use abandoned mine land survey work to help with mitigation. So things like active mines, you can see this haul road here, might close mines that it has to pass over. And then later, if the mountain comes down for mining, bats lose those sites. But we can mitigate for the loss of those sites by protecting nearby similar habitat after we exclude quality habitat to make sure no bats are lost during construction activities, and they'll go to these other suitable habitats to roost there. So we'll get on to our WNS program, and that acronym is for white nose syndrome. White nose syndrome is a disease that bats can get, and it's caused by a fungus PD, which has a long scientific name, but we can just call it PD. That was introduced from Europe in 2006. And those species in Europe have evolved with it and are not impacted by it nearly as much as our bats. But since it was novel when it was brought here, the fungus grows on our bats and looks like white spots on a bat or holes in their wings. And it causes them to use up their energy while they're hibernating. And when they use their energies, they need to replenish that, and they wake up and try to forage for insects, but it's winter, so they generally starve to death if they get the disease. And millions of bats in the US have died from white nose since its introduction, most of those being on the East Coast, but the disease has spread rapidly across the country and into Canada. But Nevada is one of the few states, I think there are 4 states that don't have white nose or PD yet. This is the spread map of PD. You can see the X in New York State where it was first found. And it has since moved across the country out west. And looking at the colors, the orange, red, and yellow, those are the more recent detections of the disease or the fungus. And if you get into the map, counties that have a circle in them have found the fungus, and counties that are filled in with a solid color have found the disease. But we can mostly think of it as the same thing. Bats can have the fungus without exhibiting symptoms or mortality from the disease. I'll step aside real quick to talk about the little brown bat. That is one of our species here in Nevada, but it is one of the most impacted species in the country so far since the introduction of white nose syndrome. Millions of bats have died, and many roosts have been completely lost. But there is some hope. Recovery has been really inconsistent, but not all roosts have been lost, and some populations might show some resilience against it. But I point out the little brown bat because it has been proposed for listing under the ESA. So a decision on that will be coming, and that will impact how we do business with this species. And it is a target for our white nose syndrome effort for our sampling and surveillance. So speaking of our effort, we're working under the National White Nose Syndrome Response Plan, which is coordinated through the Fish and Wildlife Service. And what we do is we sample bats at their hibernacula. Those are winter sites where they're sleeping. We also look at spring emergence, or we do spring emergence trapping at roost soon after they emerge from hibernacula. Those are the times of year that the fungus or disease are going to be most evident, and we'll be able to document it and send our samples in. We also do incidental disease sampling, like if Nate LaHue were to get a bat that someone turned in that might be rabid or they found dead somewhere, he would send that in. So this map here, if you can see it, is a map of the spots that we have done white nose sampling at in the state since we started about 10 years ago. If you remember back to the spread map, California has recently had a lot of positive PD detections. So in the coming years, we're going to be focusing a lot more on the California border. But if you remember also back to that map, Utah had a detection in the middle of nowhere. So that spread was a couple 100 miles with no detections in between. And that could be due to lack of sampling effort, because finding sites is so difficult for the species that we're trying to look at, or humans have also been at fault for transmitting the disease incidentally on their clothing or on a truck if a bat hitches a ride. So we're going to continue monitoring at some of these sites and also keep looking for new sites. That AML, Abandoned Mine Land Hazard Map, is something that we use a lot in our AML program to look for suitable roosts, and then we're using that to find new sites. This map shows everywhere we've sampled, but it doesn't show everywhere we've looked and tried to sample. There are treatments for the disease, but they're hard to implement because you might have to administer them to each individual every year or to a roost. But there are native fungus species that are beneficial that we don't want to eliminate with the fungicide. So it is a complicated issue. Moving on to the NA BAT program, that's the North American Bat Monitoring Program. That is a program that is now national and international, that uses bat data that is collected with the GERTS randomized sampling design, so that there's samples of bat presence and occurrence across the country that is statistically sound. The main way we contribute to this program is putting out acoustic bat detectors like the one you see here, and those document bats in a spot and get put into the database that NA BAT holds. That with that data, they can assess population status and trends. Just like birds, bats all make a different sound. The reason they make different sound is more because of their morphology, the differences in how each bat is shaped, but each species makes its own unique sound. So using these detectors, these ultrasonic detectors, we can tell what species are where. I think I lost connection with the Bluetooth. I'm sure this will catch back up. But while we're on this slide, in addition to this acoustic bat data, the NA BAT program has been working on ways to take other types of data. So for their population status and trends, they're also taking capture data, roost data, and mobile acoustic data. You can drive around with one of these on your truck, okay, to get an actual population estimate for your area. So on to our next slide. This is the effort that we have contributed to the NA BAT program. You can see all the spots. Generally, each of our biodiversity biologists has 3 spots that they'll go to and follow the protocol to collect data. And we just talked about the little brown bat, but we'll talk now about the hoary bat. Similar story. It is also being proposed to be listed under the ESA. It's the threats against the hoary bat are forest health and wind energy. They're one of the more impacted species by wind in certain parts of the country. Speaking of wind, another big project that we've worked on for the last 10 years or more is Rose Guano Cave and Spring Valley Wind. You guys have probably heard of Spring Valley Wind. It's a wind farm that's about 30 miles from us to the east. It's the only commercial wind energy facility in the state, but it's also located just 4 miles from the largest bat roost in the state. And that roost is called Rose Guano Cave. It's used by thousands to millions of free-tail bats each year. And I say thousands to millions because for a long time we didn't understand how the cave was used by bats. But with a lot of the projects I'm going to touch on later, we've found that this is mostly a migratory stopover roost. So while there may be 20 to 80,000 bats here on a given night, those bats will spend 1 to 2 nights there and then move on to somewhere else. So within a year, a couple million individuals will use the cave on their migration. In this slide, we also have a diagram of the cave. It's a large cave. If you see in the picture, those are people on the left in the opening. And so A in the diagram is the opening, and D in that back chamber is where the bats roost. And then I have a note here that it was mined for guano in the 1920s, and E there shows the adit that was drilled into the mountainside to access the guano. And this is my video slide. We can see if it plays. Or I might need, yeah, thanks. So in this video, it's just a short video that I took with my thermal camera of the bats in this cave. They're in that second chamber right now. At dusk, they'll circle like this. Most of them are still back in D, the roosting area of the cave. But this bat species has a really hard time getting up off the ground. So they need a large cave like this to gain height. So they'll corkscrew up in height until they reach the portal, and then they can fly out into the valley towards the wind farm. Yeah. So I know it'll catch up. The cave is, watching this video, it kind of shows more than that diagram does, the size of this cave. And if you guys were to drive into Spring Valley, you can see the cave from the highway. If you're anywhere near the wind farm, you can look into the Snake Range and see that cave. I'm not a geologist, but there are a lot of interesting geologic formations there. There's a couple arches in the canyons behind the cave. All right. That's probably going to jump 10 slides now. And so you can see in this thermal image, since we're on the still, blue is colder and red was warmer. When the mine adit was still open, it allowed airflow in because the two portals were at different elevations. So there was a chimney effect that changed the internal climate of the cave and made it less conducive for these bats to roost in there. All right. I think it's responding. All right. So during the process of the project starting, pre and post construction, a lot of surveys were done, baseline studies to see what species were there and whether bats were being killed. That was post construction, but also outflight. Well, that might have been me. There were also outflight counts done to see the population. There were also there was Doppler radar and radio telemetry to see where bats go. There was banding. We banded 30,000 bats there in the 2010s. And then with the banding, we captured lots of bats to determine whether they were males in a bachelor roost or if they were females doing maternity. So West was the consultant on this project, and they from all those baselines determined that what needed to happen to reduce mortality was to know how many bats were there every day. And what they decided on was a beam break system that counted bats as they flew out or in. They could tell how many bats were going out on a given day, and every day or live, they can see how many beams are being broken, and they can count the bats, and with that relative index, they know when to turn on and off the turbines. And this actually was pretty successful. Mortality reduced by 75% to below threshold levels, which we are happy with. 0 is best, but we reduced it to a place that was sustainable. Really quick, since I mentioned banding, this is still in preparation, but we're working on getting banding results from the 2010 study. And here are some of our results. There's more to it, but our bats from Rose Guano Cave really dispersed a lot farther than a cave I didn't mention, Overhang Cave. And then there's that one bat that went down to Mexico, presumably, and then up to Kansas, following a different migratory path than the rest of the bats. Onto our other programs. The first one I'll talk about is bats and bridges. So AFWA had a resolution to encourage states to work with their departments of transportation on bats using transportation structures. And so last year we started working on that ourselves with our Department of Transportation. And they manage a lot of structures, 2,000 bridges and 50,000 culverts, which I didn't realize that's a lot of culverts. Last year, 200 structures were surveyed, and bat use was found at a lot of the structures, which you guys would probably expect. You might have even seen it. A similar effort is happening this year. And then we were also able to work with NDOT to get a research project funded, and the RFP is out now. And whoever wins will do surveys and create a bat management plan for NDOT with that research money. Another thing that's important for our bat work is understanding and using, when we can, bat boxes and condos, which are artificial structures that we can put out on the landscape for bats to use, especially if they lose a roost somewhere else, an anthropogenic roost especially. If you don't want them in a barn, if you can exclude them and build something they prefer to get them out of your barn and into something else, that's kind of what we want. It makes it easier for us to manage the bats too, if we know where they are. And some of our best known Myotis, which is a guild of bats species, live in bat barns and condos. A condo being that structure on the bottom, it's just a giant bat box. The next project is MODIS, and MODIS is automated stationary telemetry that is done at a continent or continent, even a global scale. There's MODIS detector receivers all over the country and all over the world. You could see Nevada has some gaps. A lot of states have gaps. It's a pretty new idea. out west especially, but it's really expanded recently. California has been on board, and we are working to expand our network too in Nevada. This MODIS, by the way, is not an acronym. It's Latin for movement or motion. And it can be used for bats, birds, and they use it for even monarch butterflies sometimes. The benefit of MODIS is that for our small bats that can't hold a GPS tag, they can hold this telemetry or this radio tag. And the other benefit is that for migratory species that you can't track, we tried to track Mexican free-tailed bats doing telemetry. We had a plane, they just bug out too fast. But if they fly past any of these stations, then we'll detect them, and we'll detect wildlife that other states have put tags on too. And so I'll give a couple quick examples of tags that we've seen on the hoary bat since it is petitioned under the ESA. This bat was tagged in September and flew 500 miles in 3 days to get to Paranagit, which is an impressive flight. And I'll mention here that hoary bats are migratory, but it's not a migration in the sense that we typically think of it. It's more of an eruptive movement. So they could do this at different times of the year. They don't go north-south. They can do it really quickly. He might do this again in 2 months. Here's our second example, a similar one, but this bat was detected at 4 different receiver stations in the state. But it was MIA for 3 weeks in the meantime. And I think once we fill out our MODIS grid, if we can, we might get more detections. And the benefit of this to me is that in the face of more wind in the state, if that happens, these bats are pretty impacted by wind energy because of these eruptive movements that might follow high wind areas to move quickly. So we're curious if we're getting hoary bats throughout the state and how they're moving, and can we detect them in high wind areas? We're almost done here. I'll talk about some of our work with partners and let you guys know, if you didn't know, we have a Nevada Bat Working Group that recently produced an updated bat conservation plan for the state. The group also puts together multi-agency bat blitzes where if you need help with something, the group can come help you, or we can teach skills that we need people in other parts of the state or other organizations to know to get the data that we need at NDOW. I think that's about it. So I'll just mention about the field tour tonight. If you guys can make it, we'll meet at the Holiday Inn at 6:30 and go down to Steptoe Wildlife Management Area. And that's the site of a really awesome WMA, but also an old horse barn that's used by little brown bats in the valley. And we're still trying to learn more about the barn and the bats. So that's why we're going there tonight. And I think that is the end of my slides.
All right, wonderful. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it. I had no idea some of that stuff, particularly the National White Nose Syndrome group. I mean, fascinating. So anyway, good stuff. Any questions from the commission at all? Comments?
How about danger to the public? You go to these sites, any data that indicates a incident happening?
Yeah, so bats can carry rabies, and they carry it at a similar rate. I should let Nate answer this question, but they can have rabies at a similar rate to other mammal species. But normally if you see a bat, there's something wrong with it, because we don't see bats every day. If there's one on the ground, then there's a good chance that it is sick, and you'd want to stay away from it or call me or someone at the department. Did that answer your question?
Yes, Commissioner Munn.
Thanks. And this may not be a question for you, but you mentioned MODIS as a opportunity for tracking bats, and I'm curious what other kinds of species, more specifically, that the department is trying to manage that might be a cost-effective tool for monitoring.
I've heard that cinnamon teal are a common one that have gotten tags. I can think of a lot more biodiversity species, like Wilson's phalarope is another migratory sensitive species that has been getting these tags. Any others that I'm with that? Ibis, yeah, ibis have been MODIS tagged recently. White-faced ibis.
I'm wondering if that's an interesting avenue to continue thinking about as more development comes into the state, not just wind, but how that tool could be deployed to help understand the impacts of that development on wildlife species.
Yeah, the tags are relatively cheap, and depending on which one you use can last a long time. The life of the animal if you attach it permanently.
All right. Yes, Vice Chair Young.
Thank you, Chair Rogers. Do they have a theory as to in 2006 how the white nose syndrome came across?
Yeah, they think it came from cavers who went caving in Europe and then flew to New York and did more caving out there. So surprisingly, that it doesn't seem to have spread much, or at least long distances that way in the US since it's arrived here. But there have been a couple really big movements that can't quite be explained.
All right. Anything else from the commission? Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. All right, moving on to agenda item number 11. This is public comment period. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes. No action can be taken by the commission at this time. Any item requiring commission action may be scheduled on a future commission agenda. Persons making comments are asked to begin by stating their name for the record. So with that, any public comment here in Ely today? All right, seeing no public comment here in person, how about virtually via Zoom? Any public comment via Zoom? All right, seeing none, we will move on now to our last item in our field trip. As you notice from today's agenda, the field tour will visit the wildlife management area and will provide an overview of bat habitat and life history needs, including roosting, foraging, seasonal behavior, with hands-on learning through on-site bat netting efforts. Discussion will highlight active management strategies and opportunities to enhance conservation through habitat protection and restoration. The tour will conclude, it's going to conclude around noon in Ely. That may be a long tour.
And
Noon
so,
tomorrow.
yes, we are updating that little piece for you. So it's expected that this will take about an hour and a half, 2 hours. So you should be done about 8:30. Just to give you an expectation.
Perfect. Yeah, that's a little more conducive. So again, the tour will commence at 6:30 p.m. at the Holiday Inn Express and Suites at 1505 East Altman Street here in Ely. All right. So with that, I think we have covered everything for today. I appreciate everybody's attention today, and we will stand adjourned until tomorrow morning at 8:30 right back here. Thank you.